police stabbing.
And relive what happened. Many of the students also interviewed with police detectives for the initial investigation, and the defense brought those police transcripts of those interviews up multiple times during cross-examination. Friday afternoon's testimony consisted of students recalling what they saw and heard at the track meet last April. Most of the students are minors, under the age of 17, so their names cannot be shared. Much of the teenagers' testimony was consistent. A few described seeing Anthony, a Centennial student, say hi to a student under the memorial tent and sit by him. They testified that 17-year-old Austin Metcalf verbally told Karmelo Anthony, 17 at the time, to leave the memorial tent multiple times. They also testified that Anthony did not move and kept his hand inside his backpack. Multiple witnesses told the court they heard Anthony say, "Touch me and see what happens." The description of the physical altercation between Metcalf and Anthony differed between witnesses. Some witnesses demonstrated to the jury they saw Metcalf use one hand. Others testified they saw Metcalf use both hands when he touched Anthony. Some used lighter terms such as nudge and touch. Others used grab and shove to describe the force behind the physical confrontation.
It's not unreasonable that these teenagers would have differing views. They were probably all in fight or flight and having trouble, processing what happened at that time.
Allison Richardson is a principal trial consultant, not involved in the case. She says the jurors are going to consider what a reasonable person would do in the situation. But the testimony from the students is something the prosecution could bring up again in closing arguments.
There's no doubt in my mind the prosecution will address testimony because it's vital in considering whether or not he acted in self-defense or not.
In cross-examination of the witnesses, Anthony's defense team asked the teenagers to indicate their location on a diagram of the bleachers at Kirkendall Stadium, then indicate where Metcalf and Anthony were. The defense honed in on the physical comparison between Metcalf and Anthony. One witness testified Metcalf had, quote, 50 to 60 pounds on Anthony.
But we don't know the other side of the story yet. And what these jurors have agreed to do is to listen to both sides of the story. And so testimony next when the defense opens, and we may not.
Friday morning, the jury watched multiple police body camera videos. ESD school resource officer Eduardo Cortez took the stand and testified he was the one who took Anthony into custody. The jury watched his body camera video that showed Cortez radio to dispatch that he had, quote, the alleged suspect in custody. Then you hear Anthony on the video tell Cortez, "I'm not alleged, I did it." Anthony appeared to get emotional in the body camera video and goes on to say, "He put his hands on me. I told him not to." The jury was also shown pictures of the knife used in the stabbing. It was found 3 to 4 rows from the crime scene tape in between some bleachers. But the most gut-wrenching moment was when the jury saw another police officer's body camera video that captured first responders doing CPR on Metcalf at the bottom of the bleachers. Calf's twin brother, Hunter, is seen sobbing on the ground of the track field. He's heard on one of the body camera videos yelling, That's my best friend. That's my brother. A very difficult and for those in the court is Metcalf's family. The prosecution ended each testimony of the students with a similar set of questions. Did the witness believe the stabbing was self-defense? Did Austin Metcalf look like he wanted to fight? And who was the aggressor? From my notes in court today, the witnesses were consistent in their answers. They testified that they did not believe the stabbing was self-defense. They did not believe Metcalf wanted to fight, and they identified Anthony as the aggressor. Court will resume tomorrow. Testimony is set to begin at 9 a.m. Back to you.
Amelia Jones with Fox 4 Dallas. We appreciate your reporting as always. In this case, there are no cameras in the courtroom, so these reporters have really served as the eyes and the ears in this case. At this point here on Live Now from Fox, we do want to bring on some expert voices into this. Let's bring on defense attorney Jeremy Rosenthal to discuss what happened in the courtroom today. Hey, Jeremy, thanks for joining us here on Live Now.
Thank you for having me.
So we know that today Metcalf's teammates testified in the courtroom. How did they describe the moments leading up to the stabbing?
You heard a really consistent story. I think we heard from roughly 6 witnesses who were there under the tent. And functionally, Karmelo Anthony comes underneath the tent. It was there was a lot of rain that day. And so there had been a delay. Karmelo Anthony comes and takes a seat. He greets a friend, is sitting with a friend, by all accounts, not doing anything, not bothering anybody. And he was asked to leave multiple times. It was not his team's tent. The coach had instructed the other team members, that we're not going to let anybody sit under here. And everybody's testimony was consistent that Austin Metcalf sort of took exception to it. There were varying accounts of how Austin Metcalf approached Karmelo Anthony. Karmelo Anthony was sitting down at all times. Nobody testified really any differently, at least until the stabbing. And there was a lot of testimony that Karmelo Anthony had his hand in a bag and was essentially threatening and saying, if you touch me, and you'll find out. And there was some discussion too about whether or not he had something in the bag. One witness testified that he thought that there might be something in the bag and told Austin Metcalf to leave Anthony alone. But most people said they didn't believe anything was in there. In fact, one person testified that Austin Metcalf said, "This is Briscoe, and so I know you're not carrying anything in there." Then the testimony again varied, just like the reporter said, varying accounts of how Austin Metcalf made contact with Karmelo Anthony. It was described as a push, as a shove, kind of a linebacker drill, if you will, where one player pushes the dummy, the tackle dummy, sort of up and out. So there were varying degrees of force from what it sounds like. But Austin Metcalf, everybody agreed, was standing. Karmelo Anthony was sitting, and then Karmelo Anthony reacted by stabbing Austin Metcalf.
And we've known that defense is trying to argue that Anthony was acting in self-defense. Describe to us the approach from the defense attorneys trying to argue this during cross-examination today.
I think the prosecution scored a lot of emotional victories today, but in doing so, they left themselves, I think, really vulnerable to a lot of legal attack. And you can see the defense sort of, they care about what they care about, and they don't care about what they don't care about. We saw a knife. We saw the knife that was recovered, and there's blood on the knife. But we're not debating how much blood was on the knife, because it doesn't really matter when you're talking about self-defense. So the defense was very particular in setting up, where was Austin Metcalf? Where was he standing? Where was he going? Was he standing? Was Karmelo Anthony sitting? They're trying to make the danger that Karmelo Anthony was facing real. That's their entire challenge here. At one point, they sort of demonstrated through a law enforcement school resource officer what they did was they asked, can hands be a deadly weapon? Can hands cause serious bodily injury? Elevating the danger through just an assault, and the police officer had to agree with them. So they're able to sort of keep their trial theory intact. That's what you try to do in a case that's sort of where the facts are really so confined, where everybody sort of testifies about the same.
And Fox 4 Dallas did write that the defense team is seemingly trying to point out some inconsistencies between the testimony in the courtroom today and previous statements that some of the witnesses have given to police. But I do want to move on here to some other witness testimony that we have not touched on quite yet. Of course, Jeremy, there is no cameras in the courtroom, so the folks sitting in the courtroom for us are really the eyes and the ears in this case, what happens with these legal proceedings. Jeremy, jurors watched body camera video of Anthony's arrest. What stood out to you in that video, and as the officer who arrested Anthony testified?
The main debate when it came to the arrest video was Karmelo Anthony's emotional state. And that has a direct correlation because there's probably going to be a debate in this case between manslaughter, unintentional murder, or first-degree murder. So Karmelo Anthony's excitement, his state of mind, I think is really, really important. And what we saw on the video was that it really varied. At one point at the very beginning of the video with the officer, you can hear Karmelo Anthony almost sort of hysterically say, "He touched me." And so he was really kind of in a panic state. This would be maybe less than a minute after the stabbing that the officer actually made contact with him. So the prosecution tried to point out that his affect might have been sort of flatter, somewhat quickly thereafter, more flat while he was in the squad car. So sort of the game within the game when it came to his to that particular piece of video was sort of the defense trying to show that, look, he was really hysterical before. He asked, was this guy okay? And then he was still hysterical in the car. The prosecution did their best to try to flatten that out and sort of make it sort of less emotional, right? But again, that all sort of relates to the charge of manslaughter as compared to a first-degree homicide case. We don't pay as much attention to that. We're all paying attention to the self-defense charge, but that was sort of the main take from that initial video.
And Jeremy, you've talked quite a bit about the emotion that jurors are seeing from some of this video and some of this evidence from that day in 2025, but I'm curious about today and yesterday, what has Anthony's demeanor been like in the courtroom?
There's not been a lot of emotion there from him. I think he's been coached probably pretty well. He's wearing a suit that looks sharp on him. He's been very well composed. There's not been a whole lot of emotion during the time when some of the video was playing that showed Austin Metcalf receiving CPR. Some very dramatic video. His hands were kind of up, and his lawyers were consoling him. His hair is not the same as it was in his mugshot. So the defense has been very careful to sort of manicure his appearance.
Just a couple of moments ago, you briefly mentioned that pocket knife, images of that shown to jurors, that weapon recovered at the scene. Talk to us a little bit more about that evidence. What did everyone see in the courtroom today?
That was a very interesting point. So it's a folding knife, and it's about 3.5 inches long. It's perfectly legal in the state of Texas, although it was not authorized to go into the stadium. The stadium prohibits really any type of knife like that. And what was interesting about it was that it was recovered in a folded position. That knife, the folding knife, has an option to either lock out or it can be folded in, and it was recovered really kind of at a 45-degree angle, if you will. He discarded it as he was leaving. He threw it, and it was raining pretty heavily, so a lot of the blood had already washed off of it. But when they recovered it, the prosecution sort of pointed out that it was sort of folded. My impression of it, and some of the other people in the courtroom, our sort of impression was that it may actually help a self-defense charge or a manslaughter charge, because that would show that Mr. Anthony didn't have it locked out, that he didn't have it necessarily locked out in time to use it. In other words, he wasn't premeditating this, and that this might have been reactive. Maybe he was fumbling for the knife at the time that he used it. Maybe the knife wasn't in full lock position when the stabbing occurred. He also had a bit of a nick, if you will, on one of his fingers, that there was some blood that was trickling out, and we saw some photographs of that. So the recovery of the knife really brought an interesting point in. And candidly, I think it probably helped the defense a lot more than it helped the prosecution.
Yeah, evidence that we will certainly continue to follow and get your analysis on. Jeremy, my last question for you. Race and fairness has been a major part of this trial. What did you hear about racial dynamics today, either in
And then they walked through some of that video, Julia, showing that Karmelo Anthony was under the tent for about 2 minutes before Metcalf, his twin brother, and their friends got to the tent. And the whole ordeal went down in about 4.5 minutes of both of them, both parties being under that tent, Julia. But again, emotional out here. I'm looking around it here. There's a lot more demonstrators than there were yesterday during jury selection. So, you know, each side is here. It's a polarizing case, of course, that has got many headlines across this country. But those opening statements were definitely powerful on either side.
Notes, Cody. We're so fortunate that you've been able to share with us what is happening inside of that courtroom. Tell us more about the surveillance video, because your notes on this were very interesting. What were you able to see? And then I also understand there was a reaction from the victim's family when that was being played.
Yeah, Julia. So that's in the opening statement. They were referencing surveillance video, and you know, of course, everyone wanted to see video. We haven't seen anything. There's been a gag order on this case since the very beginning last year. So they start playing this video. There are 5 different angles of the video getting walked through from testimony by the forensic video analyst, and they were very wide-angle videos, Julia. And the witness had to talk about how he had to use this software to zoom in and try to make the video as clear as possible. And even then, Julia, I won't lie, it still looked very fuzzy and hazy. It definitely sets the scene. You can see what's going on, but even the prosecution distinctly said that you won't be able to uniquely identify anyone, but they referred to Karmelo on the video as the person of interest, and they referred to Austin Metcalf as the victim. Of course, as the forensic analyst has digested this video and dissected it and pointed out everything that we need to know, going through shoes and the type of clothing they were wearing. So we identified who each person was in the video, even though they kind of just look like humanoid blobs. But you see, one thing that stood out to me, Julie, is that, you know, I'm very familiar with track meets. I was under the impression that, you know, when you go to a championship track meet, you have multiple tents on the same side of the bleachers. But in this video, because it's early in the morning, just before 10 a.m. when all this happened, the high school where all this went down, Memorial High, it was just an isolated tent in the bleacher by itself. There were no surrounding, you know, schools or anything in the general area. You saw some schools walking in, but I guess, you know, the meet was just starting. But anyway, they identified Karmelo walking up the bleachers, kind of walking towards the tent. He kind of goes towards someone, and you see him standing there for a couple of minutes. Then you see Austin Metcalf, his twin brother, and his friends walking up and getting under the tent. And then once everything's happening under the tent, it just kind of looks like a blob of people. You can't really make out anything that's really going on for 5 to 6 minutes, and then you see a quick to and from, you know, and they were implying that was like the push, the initial contact. You can't really see anything happening before then. You see people walking by. They're not really, you know, turning heads as if something's loud and, you know, something's catching their attention. But all of a sudden you see that to and from, and then you see Karmelo, or who they identify as person of interest, who we're assuming to be Karmelo Anthony. He runs out from under the tent, and then he's running down the bleachers, sprinting a ways away from the tent and out of the stadium onto the track and everything, towards one of his coaches. And eventually after that, we see another angle of the video where Karmelo's been taken into custody by police. But the reaction, Julia, it wasn't a visceral reaction. You know, when you saw the to and from, of course, that's the stabbing action, if you will. All I saw him sitting 2 rows behind Austin Metcalf's father, and his head was just kind of in his hands, kind of like this. Wasn't necessarily crying, but just implying that he doesn't really want to see, even though he can't see the stabbing, but he knows in his mind this is the moment that his son lost his life. So he was just there, obviously overwhelmed by everything. I'm sitting right behind the Metcalf family. Carmelo Anthony's family is on the opposite side of the courtroom. But again, the video, not as impactful as I thought, but it definitely is a scene setter to help us understand clearer as to what's going on, since we haven't seen anything so far in this case.
Oh, incredible detail, Cody. You're setting the scene for us. Not being able to see what's going on in this case that has so many eyes on it is really helpful. You also broke some news for us earlier when it came to the jury. There have been a lot of questions about who's on this jury, what may be their demographics, how will that impact a case that has had a lot of polarization racially, especially online, even though we know these parties say, even the prosecution today in the opening saying this is not about race. But what have you observed about the racial makeup of this jury?
Yeah, Julia. So, of course, with the optics of this case, this story here, young black kid, young white kid, violent crime. Of course, people are going to have their opinions. They're going to have their judgments. And, the jury was, the makeup of the jury was in question. And so, of course, I was in jury selection yesterday, and that jury was seated around just after 5 p.m. yesterday. And I couldn't necessarily see courtroom today. We saw reports last night that there was no African-American people on the jury, and that held to be true. It's a majority white jury, of course, made up of men and women. There are 3 Asian women on the jury. One what looked to be a Middle Eastern woman on the jury, and another person of darker complexion on the jury, but none of them were African-American. There's a total of 12 jurors, 6 alternates, so a total of 18, I guess I should say. But yeah, majority white jury. All the men are white as well, so the reports were true. No African-American people on this jury. I remember yesterday during jury selection, the defense raised an objection to the prosecution's strikes. In the strike zone, there were 3 black female jurors that the prosecution wanted to strike, and that would have been all the African-American jurors that were available at the time. And the prosecution says they did not strike them on a racial basis, but on an occupational basis, because they were all educators, and they thought that would hold some sort of bias because this went down at a school. But the defense's objection was eventually denied by the judge. The judge, granted the strikes on behalf of the prosecution. So those are the only 3 available African-American jurors at the time, right before the jury got seated. That objection got denied about 15 minutes before it was seated yesterday. So majority white jury, 3 Asian women, and 2 women of color, but no African-Americans at all.
And the judge saying that there were race-neutral reasons for the strikes of the African-Americans in that pool. Cody, Thomas, thank you for all of those details. I know you got to get back inside that courtroom and grab some lunch before you get back, so we will see you later on. There's no escaping how polarizing this trial is. Both Carmelo's mother and Austin Metcalf's father have spoken about the emotional toll here. And joining me now is someone who knows really better than anyone about a trial being this polarizing. He's an attorney who successfully defended George Zimmerman, who was accused of murdering Trayvon Martin. And that was a case that had issues of race and self-defense, and defined that trial as well. We have with us Mark O'Mara. Mark, it is so good to have you on. Thank you so much for joining me. I think you're an important voice here because whether you see it this way or not, there are many people online, people who are reacting to this case, and it often seems this way whenever we have a case where 2 different parties are of different races. You have a self-defense allegation and one is unarmed, the victim. There's often a reference to the Trayvon Martin case, the George Zimmerman case. I want to ask your opinion. Do you see similarities here in this case?
Oh, no, there definitely are. It is undeniable, and we can't and really shouldn't even deny the harsh reality that race interposes itself on most criminal trials. It imposes itself on the criminal justice system as a whole. And it does so here in this case, only because they are of different races. Now, I'm not saying that Karmelo had any racial intent in his actions, but we as the observers, right, as the viewers of it, look and say, oh, obviously there's a racial component. There may have been nothing in either one of their minds the day that this happened, this tragedy occurred. But we look at it as lawyers and as commentators and say we have to be aware of it because we know, and I've argued that there's an undeniable bias existing in the criminal justice system against young black males. Used to be we could never even talk about it 20 years ago or so. Finally, we can talk about that undeniable bias, but it's there. And I would tell you, I'm very concerned that there is not an African American on this panel, and more concerned that the state was able to cross out 3 African American females that were opposed to what we do call a Batson strike because of a concern of a racial striking. And that's a problem for this trial, and we haven't even started yet.
Yeah, that's been concerning to a lot of people who are reacting to this. I'm curious what the breakdown was in that landmark trial that you successfully represented George Zimmerman, if you remember. Was it similar? There are other cases. The Ahmaud Arbery one stands out to me, where there was a question of that jury. There was only one African American on that one down in Brunswick, Georgia. What do you think that has, if it has an impact at all, on how the outcome may be in this case, and will they have a successful appeal if there's a conviction?
Well, again, my jury was 6 women, only one who was identified as maybe biracial, but no African Americans on my jury. I am very concerned, as I mentioned a moment ago, about the fact that we now go into this trial with a racial component not only existing as it did before jury selection, but now I think exaggerated or exacerbated, because now 12 non-African Americans are going to decide this kid's fate. And just as we had to deal with in the Zimmerman case, you want to have something that people can place their trust in the verdict, whatever it is. And I was sort of hopeful in the Zimmerman case that since all the evidence came out, all the arguments came out, that it would at least be understood, but it was still difficult to trust. When you go into a case like this with the undeniable racial concern and do it with a jury that has no African Americans, not only do you build in a possible appellate issue, but you really build in a social issue, that how is the committee going to look at this if he gets convicted and say this is a verdict? They're going to look at it the way they've had to for decades, which is the bias system. Here's an example of it.
Oh, wow. Really great insight, Mark. We have to get a break, but you're going to stick around a little longer. We have a lot we're going to talk about on this case. Coming up, we're going to look at the facts of the case. Also, what we learned from opening statements, but we're going back to the initial report. What did those witnesses
Believe it or not, coming from a Black American, I actually think it's going to be a fair trial. I don't think the racial tension is going. I believe in I also believe in the prosecutor, and I heard that Mike Howard, the attorney for the defense side, is actually good.
Those are comments outside of the courthouse where we are in Texas this hour for day 1 of the Karmelo Anthony trial. He's a defendant charged with first-degree murder for the fatal stabbing of 17-year-old Austin Metcalf at a high school track meet. Key pieces of evidence in this trial are going to be the surveillance footage from the stadium and witness statements. That surveillance video has already come out inside of the room. But we're taking a look at what those statements were in the police report from the people who witnessed the incident. So a school resource officer was taking down these statements in the police report. Let's take a look at witness statement number 1. And this is a minor, a witness that was sitting under the Memorial High pop-up tent with his team near the victim, Austin Metcalf. The suspect, Karmelo Anthony, was from Centennial High and was sitting under the Memorial High tent. Austin told Karmelo that he needed to move out from under their team's tent. Karmelo grabbed his bag, opened it, reached inside, and proceeded to tell Austin, quote, "Touch me and see what happens." No one really thought Karmelo really had any weapons in his bag, and Austin proceeded to touch Karmelo. Then Karmelo told Austin to punch him and see what happens. A short time later, Austin grabbed Karmelo to tell him to move, and Karmelo pulled out what this witness recalled as a black knife and stabbed Austin once in the chest and then ran away. Let's talk about what that statement means for this case. Joining us to discuss, we have trial attorney Mark O'Mara still with us, and former prosecutor prosecutor Nicole DeBoard with us. Thanks so much for being with us and breaking down this case for our viewers. Nicole, I want to start with you. With that witness statement, if you're just focusing on that, if that was the only witness to take the stand in front of this jury, do you think that this sounds like murder or self-defense?
I'm going to say this is going to be a tall mountain to climb for the defense. It sounds very much like murder. There's a couple of things that really create an issue here because under Texas law, you cannot bring a weapon to a confrontation. And based on that statement alone, essentially what we're hearing is that the person who was provoking the encounter, because he's saying, touch me and see what happens, is actually the person who has appeared at the encounter with a weapon. Certainly that's not going to be what the defense has to say about it, but I will say this does sound like a tall hill to climb in terms of self-defense.
Yeah, the defense did try to clean that up in their opening statements with whether he said, touch me and see what happens, or touch me and don't touch me and we'll be cool. Mark, I want to show you witness statement number 2 in this police report. This witness stated to police that they were all sitting on the bleachers under a Memorial High tent when another male he did not know walked over and sat under the tent. That would be Karmelo Anthony. Austin told this male that since he didn't go to Memorial, he had to leave the tent. Austin and the male went back and forth. Then Austin stood up and pushed the male to get him out of the tent. During the time of the arguing, the male was reaching around in the bag that he had. It was at this time that the male took out the knife and stabbed Austin and then left the scene. They're substantially the same, Mark, in terms of what they're saying. There are a few differences, but what's your take on whether or not from those witness statements at the time that this happened, where do you think the jury would land on a case like this?
You know, it's going to be a tough call, and I know that's an easy thing to say. You can't lose if you say you're in the middle. It's going to be a tough call for these reasons. When you actually do an analysis of self-defense, there are different components. So the argument that Karmelo Anthony was there and he shouldn't have been there. Well, that's okay, but it's not your bleachers. You don't get to throw people out because of a tent. That's an argument that you're going to see the defense make. Why did the eventual victim in this case decide that it was his role to kick him out? And then there's that tussling back and forth. And then, unfortunately, Mr. Metcalf did seemingly start the fight, so to speak, right? He was what we might call the aggressor, and pushing him out or grabbing him and touching him. So under Florida law and also Texas law, and when you're the aggressor, when you first start the fight, so to speak, you may lose the protection. If it was Karmelo who started it, Karmelo Anthony. Now we get to say shifted because Metcalf was the one who started the fight. Now can Anthony respond to defend himself? We know he can. And then, as was mentioned a moment ago, are you supposed to bring a knife to a fist fight? No. You're supposed to bring a gun to a fist fight? Absolutely not. But if you're there and starting to get attacked, which is what the defense is going to say, can you defend yourself? And what they're going to say is, Anthony doesn't wait until the first nasty strike, the first injury. He can presuppose what might happen, and he's allowed to defend himself. But again, really a tough case, because it really is in the middle, and we're talking about two 17-year-olds, and not making fun of it, but neither of which were acting with real good reason. We joke and say that a male brain isn't fully developed until 25, and unfortunately the tragedy happened probably because of a mix of testosterone and immaturity that brought these two boys together.
Yeah, Nicole, we talk a lot about whether race has a factor here, but I think age has a really big factor here, and not only the age of the defendant, the age of the stabbing victim, but also the ages of these witnesses who are going to be having to take the stand. This has been a traumatic experience for them, seeing their friend stabbed in front of them. Do you anticipate that they'll be able to shed more light on what happened, or even if at the height of this, they'll be able to say whether there was this initial aggression that Mark is talking about? But at what level would it actually be warranted for self-defense, do you think? There's this push in the police report, there's the shoving, there's the grabbing. I saw that word in the police report as well. What would it have to be in order, in your mind, to be self-defense?
In order for this to be self-defense, the law says that the person using this deadly force has to believe that that deadly force force is immediately necessary to prevent serious bodily injury or death. So this is self-defense. You cannot pull out a gun or a knife, a weapon which can be used as a deadly weapon, say, in response to a minor assault. That's unfortunately not what the law allows. If you think that you are at risk of being seriously harmed, it is a different calculus. So that is what the defense is going to have to demonstrate. And really, the Texas law on the defense's side, one thing that might potentially make this a little bit easier for them is once they have made a claim that Karmelo actually believed that he was in imminent danger of serious bodily injury or death, there's evidence.
We know he can, and then as was mentioned a moment ago, are you supposed to bring a knife to a fist fight? No. You're supposed to bring a gun to a fist fight? Absolutely not. But if you're there and starting to get attacked, which is what the defense is going to say, can you defend yourself? And what they're going to say is, Anthony doesn't need to wait until the first nasty strike, the first injury. He can presuppose what might happen, and he's allowed to defend himself. But again, really a tough case, because it really is in the middle, and we're talking about two 17-year-olds, and not making fun of it, but neither of which were acting with real good reason. We joke and say that a male brain isn't fully developed until 25, and unfortunately the tragedy happened probably because of a mix of testosterone and immaturity that brought these two boys together.
Yeah, Nicole, we talk a lot about whether race has a factor here, but I think age has a really big factor here. And not only the age of the defendant, the age of the stabbing victim, but also the ages of these witnesses who are going to be having to take the stand. This has been a traumatic experience for them, seeing their friend stabbed in front of them. Do you anticipate that they'll be able to shed more light on what happened, or even if at the height of this, they'll be able to say whether there was this initial aggression Mark is talking about? But at what level would it actually be warranted for self-defense, do you think? I mean, there's this push in the police report, there's the shoving, there's the grabbing. I saw that word in the police report as well. What would it have to be in order, in your mind, to be self-defense?
In order for this to be self-defense, the law says that the person using this deadly force has to believe that that deadly force is immediately necessary to prevent serious bodily injury or death. So this is self-defense. You cannot pull out a gun or a knife, a weapon which can be used as a deadly weapon, say, in response to a minor assault. That's unfortunately not what the law allows. If you think that you are at risk of being seriously harmed, it is a different calculus. So that is what the defense is going to have to demonstrate. And really, the Texas law on the defense's side, one thing that might potentially make this a little bit easier for them is once they have made a claim that Karmelo actually believed that he was in imminent danger of serious bodily injury or death, there's evidence of that in front of the jury. Once that happens, essentially what has to happen is that the prosecution has to disprove that. So these witnesses that we're going to hear from, which are just these young kids who are essentially, going to a high school track meet, have to be able to get up on the stand and really explain what was going on. And, on the prosecution side, I think these are going to be really compelling witnesses because of their youth on the one hand. On the other hand, they're going to have to endure adult cross-examination.
Oh, yeah. And speaking of cross-examination and people being on the stand, Mark O'Mara, I know we have to go to break soon, but I want to get your final thoughts. The defendant taking the stand, do you think it's a good idea? Do you think it is necessary here? Will we see that happen?
We always know that our own client is always our worst witness and his own worst enemy. And that's the problem. However, in a self-defense case, you almost have to take the stand to say, here's why I did what I did. Don't forget, self-defense is an affirmative act. I did it and I intended to do it, and here's why. So you have to say the why. The other problem that the Anthony team is going to have to overcome that's relevant under Texas law and Florida law is if you're doing an event that you perceive to be self-defense, then once the threat is gone, you have an affirmative action to fix things a little bit. Flight away from the scene actually hurts the defense. Because once you stabbed, once you've done what you had to do because of your self-defense right, okay, threat is gone, help, render aid, call the cops, stick around and give your opinion of self-defense. And I know we're talking about 17-year-olds, but anyone who leaves the scene and then argues self-defense is sort of inconsistent with their behavior.
Oh, yeah. We're going to talk a lot more about that and exactly what police say he did after he the jury of 12 plus 6 alternates. Here's a portion of the prosecution's opening statement. They told this jury, we are all here because Karmelo Anthony decided to take a knife to a high school track meet and provoke another young man who he didn't know into touching him, holding an already open knife in his hand and plunging it into his heart. They went on to say that this man decided to commit an unjustified provoked murder, and that this case has nothing to do with race. This is not self-defense. Let's talk about the prosecution's beginning of their case in front of this jury. With us, we have our guest, former prosecutor Nicole DeBoard, criminal defense attorney Joanna Nieves, and criminal defense attorney Mario Gallucci. It's so good to have you all on. Mario, let me get your thoughts on this first. I've been hearing you talk about it all day with Ted, but when you hear this fact that the prosecution says they have, that the knife was open inside of the bag, how compelling is that to this case?
So, I mean, the prosecution's trying to make it seem like he went there with an open knife in his bag to cause a problem. I don't see it that way. It's a pocket knife. We're not talking about a machete. We're not talking about a dagger. We're not talking about a switchblade. We're talking about, an ordinary pocket knife that's used on a daily basis to do whatever utility you need to be done. So just by and I believe you're going to hear this from the defense, just by the virtue of there being an open pocket knife in a bag doesn't to harm someone. And I think that's what's going to come out on the defense side once we get this trial up and running.
And Joanna, what do you think about the theory that the prosecution has that Karmelo Anthony's position all along was to get someone to do something so that he could kill them? Do you think that's effective? And is Karmelo Anthony going to have to take the stand to combat that?
Hi, Julia. I definitely think there's a damage that happens when you kind of over-exaggerate and emphasize things that aren't necessarily going to be consistent with what the defense is going to put forward. Karmelo Anthony was a good student. He worked. He came from a good family. He's got a support system. He participated in athletics. And you want the jury to believe that he really came to school with the track meet with the intention of murdering somebody. I think that's a far stretch of the imagination, and the prosecution is almost like just over-promising and likely going to under-deliver in that regard.
We'll talk about the over-promising and undelivered, especially when it comes to that surveillance video that was shown. But Nicole, I want to get your last thoughts on what we just showed in terms of the opening statements. The prosecution wanting to make sure that they say in that little bit of 20 minutes that they got in front of this jury that this case has nothing to do with race, and this is Did they need to state that? Are they trying to get out ahead of something? Are they just saying that to the public that is watching and perhaps just feeling very polarized about this case?
That's a great question because, it's kind of like telling a bunch of people who are going to decide the facts don't think of pink elephants. I mean, that's what they're going to think immediately to me. So I'm not sure it was necessary to say that. It is, however, true that the case is going to be all about self-defense or not self-defense. And so I don't know that they revealed any sort of concern for weakness by saying that. And the reality is it's going to boil down to how jurors on this case think about whether or not it's a problem for a student, for anyone, to bring a knife of any kind to a track meet. And I think that is going to be the defense's biggest hurdle. And, we don't have premeditation in Texas. That's all we have is intent in the moment. And so the prosecution doesn't really have to show any kind of forethought in terms of how long this planning would have gone on. They get to show whether or not the conduct was intentional in the very moment that it happened. And that's it. So I think that the defense has got a big climb here.
Distinction there when it comes to murder in the state of Texas. I do want to show a few more details that came out during that prosecution opening statement. This includes that Austin Metcalf, the stabbing victim, and team were under their school tent at that track meet, that Karmelo Anthony went under Metcalf's team tent during bad weather. Metcalf asked Anthony to leave the tent, prompting a fight where Anthony stabbed Metcalf. Mario, I'm going to focus on one part of that actually has come up a lot online by our viewers. Early on, there was a question of why Karmelo would have been under the tent. And I know I mentioned on air even that it could have been because it was raining. And we found out today that both sides say it was raining really bad. And the school that Karmelo Anthony went to was not one that had a tent. Is that important? Is the reason that he was under that tent important when we had this prosecution saying he went there to provoke a murder?
Look, Julia, I can't agree with you more. I mean, it's raining out. There's a tent. You seek shelter. I don't think that the fact that his school did not have a tent has anything to do with it. There was a tent. It was raining. He went there. And we just found out during the opening statements that he actually had a friend in the tent that he met and spoke to. So it's not like, there's no tent and he went there with the forethought to start a fight, provoke a fight, and stab somebody. I just don't see that this tent has anything really to do with anything.
Yeah, that was new information that came out about why he was under the tent. The defense saying he had friends there. The state didn't mention anything about that. Joanna, the state did start with surveillance video that was very grainy. Up until this point, no one in the public has been able to see it outside of reporters who were able to go and look at it, take notes, handwritten notes, and then tell their viewers or their readers about what they saw. And now we're in the same situation because there are no cameras inside of that courtroom. What do you think about the prosecution really hanging their hat on this surveillance video?
My understanding of the video is that it's difficult to make out like clear pictures of what's going on, but I do think that it might highlight if there was chaos at the scene, how many people were around, and kind of shed some light, maybe even for the defense, on what was going through Karmelo's mind at the time when this incident occurred, because what it boils down to was, did he perceive a threat in that moment that he might be subjected to some serious bodily injury or death? And if there is it brings to mind this case, Raul Valle, where he was surrounded by a group of people. He ends up using a knife and stabs some of the victims there, and one of them dies, and he was acquitted of these charges, the top charges, because of his perceived fear in that moment, or his perceived threats. And I think this video, as grainy as it may be, may actually shed some light on the commotion and the activity that was taking place, and how that impacted Karmelo's thinking.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And great case comparison with the Raul Valle case that still kind of hangs in the balance, because the jury was hung on the lower charges, but on murder they did acquit him. We are going to take a break. Our panel is staying with us because we're going to look next at what the defense said this morning during their opening statement and some new details that they revealed.
ends up using a knife and stabs some of the victims there, and one of them dies, and he was acquitted of these charges, the top charges, because of his perceived fear in that moment, or his perceived threats. And I think this video, as grainy as it may be, may actually shed some light on the commotion and the activity that was taking place, and how that impacted Karmelo's thinking.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and great case comparison with the Raul Valley case that still kind of hangs in the balance because the jury was hung on the lower charges, but on murder they did acquit him. We are going to take a break. Our panel is staying with us because we're going to look next at what the defense said this update on what's happening there. But we do want to show you what happened this morning during the opening statements. Both sides only got 20 minutes to deliver this to the jury of 12 plus 6 alternates. Here's a portion of the prosecution's opening statement. They told this jury, "We are all here because Karmelo Anthony decided to take a knife to a high school track meet and provoke another young man who he didn't know into touching him, holding an already open knife in his hand and plunging it into his heart." They went on to say that this man decided to commit an unjustified provoked murder and that this case has nothing to do with race. This is not self-defense. Let's talk about prosecution's beginning of their case in front of this jury. With us, we have our guest, former prosecutor Nicole DeBoard, criminal defense attorney Joanna Nieves, and criminal defense attorney Mario Gallucci. It's so good to have you all on. Mario, let me get your thoughts on this first. I've been hearing you talk about it all day with Ted, but when you hear this fact that the prosecution says they have, that the knife was open inside of the bag, how compelling is that to this case?
So, I mean, the prosecution's trying to make it seem like he went there with an open knife in his bag to cause a problem. I don't see it that way. It's a pocket knife. We're not talking about a machete. We're not talking about a dagger. We're not talking about a switchblade. We're talking about, an ordinary pocket knife that's used on a daily basis to do whatever utility you need to be done. So just by, and I believe you're going to hear this from the defense, just by the virtue of there being an open pocket knife in a bag doesn't mean that he went there with the intent to harm someone. And I think that that's what's going to come out on the defense side once we get this trial up.
And Joanna, what do you think about the theory that the prosecution has that Karmelo Anthony's position all along was to get someone to do something so that he could kill them? Do you think that's effective? And is Karmelo Anthony going to have to take the stand to combat that?
Hi, Julia. I definitely think there's a damage that happens when you kind of over-exaggerate and emphasize things that aren't necessarily going to be consistent with what the defense is going to put forward. Karmelo Anthony was a good student. He worked. He came from a good family. He's got a support system. He participated in athletics. And you want the jury to believe that he really came to school with the intention of, or a track meet with the intention of murdering somebody. I think that's a far stretch of the imagination. And the prosecution is almost like just over-promising and likely going to under-deliver in that regard.
We'll talk about the over-promising and undelivered, especially when it comes to that surveillance video that was shown. But Nicole, I want to get your last thoughts on what we just showed in terms of the opening statements. The prosecution wanting to make sure that they say in that little bit of 20 minutes that they got in front of this jury that this case has nothing to do with race and this is not self-defense. Did they need to state that? Are they trying to get out ahead of something? Are they just saying that to the public that is watching and perhaps just feeling very polarized about this case?
That's a great question because, it's kind of like telling a bunch of people who are going to decide the facts don't think of pink elephants. I mean, that's what they're going to think immediately to me. So I'm not sure it was necessary to say that. It is, however, true that the case is going to be all about self-defense or not self-defense. And so I don't know that they revealed any sort of concern for weakness by saying that. And the reality is it's going to boil down to how jurors on this case think about or whether or not it's a problem for a student, for anyone, to bring a knife of any kind to a track meet. And I think that is going to be the defense's biggest hurdle. And, we don't have premeditation in Texas. That's all we have is intent in the moment. And so the prosecution doesn't really have to show any kind of forethought in terms of how long this planning would have gone on. They get to show whether or not the conduct was intentional in the very moment that it happened, and that's it. So I think that the defense has got a big climb here.
A really important distinction there when it comes to murder in the state of Texas. I do want to show a few more details that came out during that prosecution opening statement. This includes that Austin Metcalf, the stabbing victim, and team were under their school tent at that track meet. That Karmelo Anthony went under Metcalf's team tent during bad weather. Metcalf asked Anthony to leave the tent, prompting a fight where Anthony stabbed Metcalf. Mario, I'm going to focus on one part of that actually has come up a lot online by our viewers. Early on, there was a question of why Karmelo would have been under the tent. And I know I mentioned on air even that it could have been because it was raining. And we found out today that both sides say it was raining really bad. And the school that Karmelo Anthony went to was not one that had a tent. Is that important? Is the reason that he was under that tent important when we had this issue of the prosecution saying he went there to provoke a murder?
Look, Julia, I can't agree with you more. I mean, it's raining out. There's a tent. You seek shelter. I don't think that the fact that his school did not have a tent has anything to do with it. There was a tent. It was raining. He went there. And we just found out during the opening statements that he actually had a friend in the tent that he met and spoke to. So it's not like, there's no tent and he went there with the forethought to start a fight, provoke a fight, and stab somebody. I just don't see that this tent has anything really to do with anything.
Yeah, that was new information that came out about why he was under the tent. The defense saying he had friends there. The state didn't mention anything about that. Joanna, the state did start with surveillance video that was very grainy. Up until this point, no one in the public has been able to see it outside of reporters who were able to go and look at it, take notes, handwritten notes, and then tell their viewers or their readers about what they saw. And now we're in the same situation because there are no cameras inside of that courtroom. What do you think about the prosecution really hang their hat on this surveillance video?
My understanding of the video is that it's difficult to make out like clear pictures of what's going on, but I do think that it might highlight if there was chaos at the scene, how many people were around, and kind of shed some light, maybe even for the defense, on what was going through Karmelo's mind at the time when this incident occurred. Because really what it boils down to was, did he perceive a threat in that moment that he might be subjected to some serious bodily injury or death? And if there is it brings to mind this case, Raul Valle, where he was surrounded by a group of people. He ends up using a knife and stabs some of the victims there, and one of them dies. And he was acquitted of these charges, the top charges, because of his perceived fear in that moment, or his perceived threats. And I think this video, as grainy as it may be, may actually shed some light on the commotion and the activity that was taking place, and how that impacted Karmelo's thinking.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And great case comparison with the Raul Valle case that still kind of hangs in the balance because the jury was hung on the lower charges, but on murder, they did acquit him. We are going to take a break. Our panel is staying with us because we're going to look
get to them, was following him while on 911. So they obviously saw this kid and he wasn't running outside the stadium. So anyway, the officer ends up approaching him, and the body cam comes on during the apprehension. So it wasn't on during, most of it, but when it comes on, we start seeing it there. And the thing about it, Karmelo actually, Chris, was cooperating. He was compliant. He was following orders. He was, respectful. What's your name? He's spelling his name out without the officer even prompting him. And he goes over and he sits him down, and then the officer cuffs him just to detain him, before they even, take him off campus in the squad car down to the jail, any of that. But one of the most important things about one of these body cams, Chris, is the audio, because you hear they're walking along and the officer's kind of doing some back and forth with them. And then you hear Karmelo say, he put his hands on me. I told him not to. And that's the part that the prosecution's harping on, the I told him not to part, because they're pretty much saying that part's a lie. Every account that we've heard so far in the reporting over the last year and some of the students today was just the whole touch me and see what happens. It wasn't don't touch me. It wasn't, if you keep your hands off me, we're cool. It was touch me and see what happens, making it sound more on the offensive. But when he said that statement, though, Chris, the whole I told him not to put his hands on me and all that, he was sobbing. The emotion was you heard it. You didn't see his face, but you heard it instantaneously. And so then a few minutes goes by, and then he seems a little bit calmer. Like you were just, high energy here, that high, sad energy, and then now you're calm and just, my name's Karmelo Anthony, and I'm a senior or what have you. But anyway, that was the important part of that statement. Now, another statement made that camera didn't pick up, but from the other officer who was there, who had, a better audio on her camera, they radioed in, we have the alleged suspect. Karmelo then goes, it's not alleged, I did it. So there was an immediate admission, within 6 minutes of this stabbing happening. But the thing about it, Chris, on one of those body cam videos, the second one, you actually saw, they're going up there, scoping the scene and figuring everything out. You actually see graphic in nature, the chest compressions being done on what we now know to be Austin Metcalf's lifeless body. You saw a little blood around. You just see him just kind of, splayed out, and you hear a bunch of, the kids yelling out, that was my brother. They stabbed my brother. That's my best friend. And, all this different stuff. And we heard a 911 call made by the students. So we heard a lot of audio visuals today, Chris. Very graphic in nature, real emotional. And, I'm sitting 2 rows behind the Metcalf family every single day. I could reach out and touch his father. That's how close he is to me. And, for the majority of the day, he's just holding his head in his hands, just taking in all the facts. I mean, he's been dealing with this for a year, but when you see, your son laying there lifeless, you hear 911 calls, you're seeing all the love and support that he was getting, from the friends and the coaches. So he was supported, but, to what avail, because he's not here anymore.
Yeah, and to just think, because I know yesterday we were talking about the 911 calls and just how emotional that was, but then you have to actually see the chaos that was taking place. As the body cam was playing, what was Karmelo doing in the courtroom?
That's interesting, Chris, because I was, I'm right here in the Metcalf camp, but I try to, keep my head on a swivel, not only to the jury, but over on that side of the courtroom as well. And it's just very stoic. It's just very, I don't know if the word emotionless is correct, because I'm sure they're feeling a lot of things, but maybe emotionless not in a negative sense, but it just very, stale-faced. I imagine, Karmelo's sitting there, he's just looking. He's not moving around. He's not looking around the courtroom. He's not rocking his chair. He's just looking right at it, because I'm sure he's reliving, his version of what went down that day, and probably, regretting the biggest mistake of his life. And you're looking across at his family, and they're just taking that in. And I have to think about it from that point of view as well, Chris, because could you imagine your son, your brother, your nephew, this kid that you've seen grow up, and now he's being accused of these, the maximum crimes you could be accused of, killing someone. So they're over there just a little more stale, not in a negative sense, but just real cemented in, hearing what's going on. But of course, there's visceral, audible emotion on the Metcalf side.
Yeah, and again, like, you've seen this video, you wonder if the Metcalf family had seen that video before it being played in court, and just having to relive all of this. I know today, too, that there were pictures up on the screen where we saw the alleged murder weapon. We saw this knife that was used to stab Austin Metcalf. Just what was your reaction seeing that, and then how it worked into what prosecutors are alleging?
So the big takeaway from the knife, Chris, is that it has a 3.5-inch blade. It looked like a heavy duty knife. It's not what I expected it to look like. You know, I'm sure you have too, plenty of different styles of pocket knives, but this one just looks like just one of the ones that won't break when you try to cut something. You know, the blade is not going to bend on this one. And it just left me wondering, why did you have, if you had any sort of blade, I don't know what it would have been for, maybe to cut some rope or what have you, but this one seems a little bit excessive, but neither here nor there. But then they had, when they brought the knife up there, they had one of the officers come down and they did a little demonstration with it, because it's one of those folding pocket knives where the blade folds down into the handle. And before they did the demonstration, the prosecutor asked the officer, "You carry something similar like this at work?" And the officer was like, "Yeah, as a tool for cutting seatbelts, you know, and people get in car crashes and things like that. So it's a pretty heavy duty, sharp knife." But then they did the demonstration and they pulled it out, you know, normally like you would two-handed. But it has this thing on it, Chris, called a thumb stopper. And it's like a little thing that sticks off the side of the blade where you can just pick it out with one hand. Not to be confused with the switchblade, nothing like that, but just showing how fast you could, you know, just whip it out if you wanted to. And, you know, that's where the prosecution was alluding, like he already had his hand in the bag. You know, maybe he already realized what he wanted to do and pick a fight. So if and when Austin Metcalf shoved him in the shoulder, he just, you know, took it out really quickly. But yeah, the reaction to the knife, it definitely fits. It fits the prosecution's narrative. It definitely looks like one of those knives that could penetrate deeply if, you know, stabbed with enough force. But again, 3.5 inches, Chris, you got to realize, that's another part of it. On one of the body cams, we saw, you know, he threw the knife in the bleachers before he ran off. That's what we were hearing about. And, you know, hit up in the bleachers, metal on metal, made a big clanking sound. One of the students told the officers where it was. And you see one of the officers walk up, because he was kind of in charge of scene safety, scene security, you know, making sure the evidence wasn't compromised. He looks down, he's like, I found it. And then he says on his body cam, "Oh, that still has blood evidence and bone evidence on it." It's one thing, we expected the blood naturally, but bone evidence, you couldn't really see it because it was raining that day. But I mean, you know, in person, he clearly saw it for him to make that statement. So definitely a sizable knife there, Chris, when they showed that on the screen.
You know, Cody, I think one thing that is also important to know is just how quickly all of this went down. You know, it is, you know, it from what's been told by witnesses and some of the EMTs. I mean, Austin Metcalf may not have even realized that he had been stabbed in those moments. And it just kind of speaks to the chaos of everything. And I keep going back to that word chaos, because that's truly what it was. And today, for the first time, we heard from some of the students, some of the teammates of Austin Metcalf who were there under this tent. There was like 5 or 6 of them who spoke, and there were some common themes to what they said. These are state witnesses brought by the prosecution. What were some of the things that stood out to you just on their account of what they saw that day?
Well, Chris, one of the main commonalities, the common denominators between them all is what you just pointed out, the speed at which it happened. All of them said that they didn't even realize what had happened because it had happened so fast. I mean, including Austin Metcalf himself. They said when the stabbing happened, they said they looked at Austin and he was just stumbling back, and he just, you know, was doing, you know, a motion like this. And then he pulled his shirt up, and that's when they saw the gaping wound. But not one of them said they even saw a knife. So that was one thing, Chris. The biggest commonality between them all is that they all said Karmelo was the aggressor. They all said they were sitting under the tent and he walks up and just sits under there. Didn't say anything really to anybody. One person said that he shook hands with another teenager there, but even when he did that, he just sat down and wasn't talking to anyone. Didn't ask, "Hey, can I sit here? Hey, what's going on?" And of course, they kept diving into the tent culture, you know, at track meets, where each tent is pretty much alluded to as a locker room for each team, and you wouldn't hang out in the opposing team's locker room. And they also said their coaches didn't really allow it. If the coaches saw somebody from the opposing team, like Karmelo was from Centennial High School, sitting under the Memorial High School tent, that just would not have been allowed. So all of them say, you know, who was this kid? One described him as a random kid who just came down from the top of the bleachers, sat down. Questions started like, "Who are you? What's your name? What are you doing here?" And that's eventually when they say, you know, Austin Metcalf stood up, because he was looked at as a leader of the team, looked at as a team captain. He was the captain on the football team as a linebacker, and a lot of, you know, there's a lot of translation between football and track athletes. So they're all kind of one big family. And they say he stood up, and all of them said that Austin started off calmly. You know, "Hey man, what's going on? You shouldn't really be here." You know, just get off from under the tent. Not in any aggressive way. Everything was calm. And they said Karmelo was just like not responding, just saying no, or if you want me to move, you're gonna have to make me move. Just, being real adamant about not leaving the tent. And so eventually they said Austin started getting a little frustrated. People, other people under the tent started getting frustrated. Others were chiming in. Some of the people on the witness stand, some of the students testified to that they were chiming in also. Like, what are you doing here, man? Like, and none of them said any cussing was going on. They asked specifically, were there any profanity, any cussing? They're like, not that I remember. So maybe it wasn't a nasty altercation, but just a frustrating one. And so the students did admit that Austin started getting a little heated. Karmelo started getting a little heated. But then they started talking about Karmelo's hand in the bag. And then all of them said that same thing that we've heard, Chris, the phrase, touch me and find out, touch me and you see what happens. And, they started talking about how here in Frisco, Texas, here in Collin County, this is, suburban, fantasy land. Like none of this happens out here. That all of them were saying the same things, that they would not have expected someone to bring a knife to a track meet on school grounds. They have never heard of anything like that. They weren't expecting anything like that. I mean, imagine being 14, 15, 16 and about somebody having a knife in a book bag, to the point where they said, Austin looked at him and said, oh, you don't have anything in that bag, by calling his bluff, pretty much. He had his hand in the bag and thought, you don't have anything in there. We live in Frisco. You aren't going to do anything. And they say that's when Austin walked up and, that's where the inconsistency comes in. Was it a hard push? Was it a one-handed push? Whatever it happened, they say that's when the stabbing happened so fast. And another thing they all said, Chris, was that it was a little bit of commotion, but they all said they did not even expect a fight to happen. One girl testified, and she was at the tent next to it at Liberty High School, maybe 20, 30 feet away. She heard the argument going on, but she thought it was just boys being boys. So she went to go watch the 3200 race. And by the time she walked down to the fence, Austin was stabbed. And, the prosecutor asked her, if you're a teenager, if you expected a fight, teenagers are going to pull their phones out. We've seen fights before in high school. It's like watching a wrestling match. You're not going to turn away from that. But everyone seemed to turn away. People were on their phones scrolling TikTok, scrolling Instagram, not really concerned with what was happening. They heard it happening, but it wasn't to the point where they thought this would be the result here.
Yeah, and it's just you think too, for all these kids who are testifying today, these teenagers, I mean, they've probably lived and thought about this moment, going into this courtroom, facing Karmelo Anthony and saying this ever since this happened more than a year ago. The tent culture stuff, I noticed that keeps coming up. That seems to be like a constant theme. And the other part too that stood out to me, just looking at some of the notes from today, is how many of them bluntly said in court that they did not believe that this was self-defense. And it just seems like that is something, if you're a juror, I mean, that, from the defense standpoint, that's got to be something that gets, at least I would assume his defense attorney frustrated, where you're having these witnesses, the people who are there looking at jurors and saying, I do not believe that this was self-defense. How did the defense today handle these witnesses that the state put on the stand?
Yeah, Chris, that was one thing that stood out to me when I was sitting in there. I was actively thinking about it as the proceedings were going on, was that under cross-examination, the defense was not really attacking these students aggressively. I don't know if that's a strategy move, given, some of them are minor, some of them have graduated, going off to college here in the fall, but they weren't really going at them as hard as I expected them to. I would imagine you have a couple of teenagers, you're trying to slice and dice their stories, find every inconsistency that you can find. But the thing about it is they were essentially asking the same questions that the prosecution was asking. And the kids were just reiterating what they already said under direct. So it's a very interesting strategy to me, Chris, because, I always looked at cross-examination as you're trying to essentially cross somebody up to go in the favor of your client on the defense's side. So real lack of aggression here. But of course, we're only on day 2. We don't know what they're playing for their case once that comes around, what that's going to be like. Of course, maybe it'll be more intense than we think. But right now, Chris, it just seems a little pulled back. But we'll have to see as the trial continues.
Yeah, it seems like they're just trying to maybe weather the storm, a little bit with these witnesses, because these are witnesses that were under Austin Metcalf's tent. These are Austin Metcalf's friends. And I don't know if the defense has brought that part up. I did notice that they've brought up Karmelo Anthony's size multiple times, that he is smaller than Austin Metcalf. I think Austin Metcalf was like 6'1", 6'2", 215. Karmelo Anthony maybe like 185, right? I mean, I know he played defensive back. I think Austin Metcalf was like a linebacker or a defensive end. So there's like a little size difference, but I don't know, when I hear them talking about Karmelo Anthony's size, like he was a football player, he was an athlete. I know he was looking to play college football. I just don't know how strong of he was giving some weight up to Austin Metcalf when he had a knife, whether that's something that might really resonate with the juror.
Yeah, Chris, and I hear that too. And actually, they say he's smaller than 185. They say he was around 145.8. Okay. So what they're trying to do. Yeah, I mean, I look at him and, you know, he looks like an average sized kid when I walk past him. Clearly, you know, a little thinner, but he's still essentially a grown man. He's still 18 at this point. He doesn't look like a child, but neither here nor there as far as that, Chris. I think where they're going, they're trying to show some kind of stark disparity. Okay, we got the two twins over here that again 6'1", 6'2", 215, burly boys, linebackers, all of this. But they're trying to make them out to seem like these big bullies, I feel. Like they were asking one of the students on the stand today, well, you know, if you were to walk up on Austin Metcalf, would you feel threatened or intimidated? And he just responded. He was like, I don't know about intimidated. He was like, I probably wouldn't pick a fight with him, but it wasn't like he was, you know, walking up like a giant and being, you know, abrasive about things. But I think that's just what they're trying to throw at the wall here, Chris, to show aggression on Austin Metcalf's side, trying to aid in that self-defense claim that they're having or presenting for Karmelo Anthony.
Because one other thing that I kind of noticed as well, because I remember when this case first happened and the police kind of laid out this fact that like the track meet had been delayed because of rain, and maybe Karmelo Anthony went into the tent because it was raining, but it also doesn't seem like from the testimony that it was some like monsoon that was in the area where everybody was taking cover because it was coming through.
And actually, one of the things they pointed out is that it wasn't even an actual rain delay. There was confusion. There were athletes warming up. They had put rain delay on the billboard, on the scoreboard, but that wasn't true. It wasn't even official. So every officer's account, every trainer who was out there, every coach, every athlete, they all admitted, yeah, it was drizzling. The drizzle picked up, you know, a little as the day went on. But as far as the morning goes, it was just a really wet morning. It rained overnight. They say the rain didn't really start until after the stabbing happened, because one of the former coaches who actually testified yesterday said he kneeled down. He was the head track coach, actually. He kneeled down with Hunter Metcalf, the twin brother of Austin, to pray, you know, after this happened. Of course, there's a lot of emotion in this moment, a couple of minutes after your brother's been stabbed. And he said as soon as he kneeled down to pray, that's when rain really started to come. But all before that, by all accounts that we've heard so far on the witness stand, it was not really raining at all. It was just wet and misty, just really a yucky day. So, you know, there are people out there with umbrellas, there are people without umbrellas. So, and the defense keeps asking the witnesses, are you aware that Centennial is the only team that didn't have a tent that day? Alluding to the fact that, you know, maybe somebody doesn't want to stand outside and get drenched, you know, just get drained in rainwater, but that doesn't seem to be the case here.
And as you're kind of watching and taking in what's happening in the courtroom, I mean, these are long days. I mean, I think it's like 9 hours. You know, I think today was like 8 hours. You know, the judges really kind of have his in getting this, getting this done to the point where they're going to be having court on Saturday as well. What has stood out to you about the jury as all of this has been going on?
Their responses to some of this stuff that's obviously being presented. I mean, you're watching a child die on body cam. You're looking at another 17-year-old across the way who's accused of that killing. You're seeing this bloody knife. You know, you're seeing the bloody clothes. You're hearing 911 calls and the testaments of all these people who saw a child die in these stands. And so I'm looking at them, and you know, it's a mixture of grown men and women, obviously.
For the murder of Austin Metcalf, he said that this was all based out of self-defense. Turns out witness testimony in trial said it was not, with many individuals reporting that witnesses testified that Karmelo Anthony came to the scene and provoked the incident that then resulted in him stabbing Austin Metcalf. And you can't claim self-defense when you provoke an incident that causes your so-called self-defense. Recap, we've got a nice summation here courtesy of NBC Dallas Fort Worth, which gave us some very nice extensive updates in text because none of this is being broadcast via audio or by video, and we'll get into the nitty-gritty on exactly how this went down, but here's a quick summary from Brooke Taylor, who said today there were 2 teens who were under the tent who witnessed the 17-year-old Austin Metcalf, the deceased, being fatally stabbed in the chest. One of the teammates testified the stabbing did not look like self-defense at all and said Karmelo Anthony was the one who provoked it. Here is what this sounded like from outside the courthouse in Texas.
Hi, Martha. Well, there are no cameras inside this courtroom, but I could tell you that today one of the key witnesses was a 17-year-old student who was one of Metcalf's athletes and teammates. He was under this tent. He saw it all. So this is going to be really important testimony. He said that he witnessed Anthony walk under the Memorial High School tent, even though Anthony went to a different high school. And that's when 17-year-old Austin Metcalf told Anthony to leave the tent. He testified, quote, "I remember Karmelo refusing to leave and Anthony saying, 'You need to leave,' and Karmelo saying, 'Touch me and find out.'" The prosecutor asked, "Anyone try to gang up on him?" He replied, "No, sir." "Who was provoking?" the prosecutor asked. "Karmelo Anthony," he replied. The witness said, quote, "Austin leans in to push him and Karmelo stabs him." Jurors were also shown body camera footage of Anthony being detained right after the stabbing. He tells the officer, quote, "I'm not alleged, I did it. He put his hands on me. I told him not to." Now, Anthony's defense attorneys argue that he stabbed Metcalf, who was unarmed, in self-defense and out of fear. Meanwhile, Anthony's supporters have long claimed that race is a factor in this case, helping fuel demonstrations. The final jury does not include any black jurors. Prosecutors say this case has nothing to do with race. Meanwhile, we're told inside court right now, we've just heard the testimony from a second witness. He was asked by prosecutors, quote, "Did this look like self-defense to you?" He responded, "No, sir." Martha.
And a lot more on that in the actual trial updates. Prosecution, Your Honor, calls Officer Eduardo Cortez. Officer Cortez takes the stand. Yes, I do. Officer Cortez, tell us about your background and experience. He says, "I'm a school resource officer. I work with the Frisco Police Department, and I was born and raised in Louisville, and I'm a U.S. Marine veteran. And I started working with the police department in 2016, but before that, I was with the Allen Police. And on the day, I was actually working at Staley Middle School, which is right next to the stadium at the time of the stabbing. There were no police officers inside the stadium at the time, and so I was the closest one there." Did you know Austin Metcalf or the Metcalf twins? Yeah, I did. I knew him. And as soon as I got the phone call about the stabbing on my portable radio, I immediately ran over to the tent. And I got there. I arrived on scene. When I arrived, 2 students came up to me and they said, "Austin's over there." And I saw the tent and I was heading that way, but I also wanted to look for the suspect. So I did. And once I located Karmelo Anthony, I asked him to raise his hands in the air. I said, "Ray, put him up," and walk toward me. There was a fence separating him from Anthony, so the 2 walked along the fence together so that Cortez could reach through the fence and pat him down for weapons. How was Anthony's demeanor at the time? He was completely cooperative, quote, and Metcalf's father was seen again with his hand face during this testimony. Officer, tell us more about other law enforcement. He says, "Well, when they got there, I advised the other officers that I had the alleged suspect detained in cuffs. Kids pointed him out. I saw him. I went to pat him down, put him in handcuffs. So I said, I've got the alleged suspect." And what happened after that? Well, at that point, Karmelo Anthony said, quote, "I'm not alleged. I did it." Cop says that. Anthony then told Cortez that Austin put his hands on Anthony and that Anthony told him not to. "I said, if you put your hands on me, something's going to happen." I wish we had more quotes on that, but we don't. The interaction was captured on Cortez, the officer's body-worn camera, and he said that after putting Anthony in the squad car, Anthony said and asked if he was going to be okay, and the officer said, "I don't know." He said he noticed an injury on Karmelo's left middle finger where there was, quote, "a little bit of blood," and maybe that's from his finger going up into the knife during the stabbing if it doesn't have a guard. So the testimony continues. Cortez then says that he described the interaction with Anthony at the meet. Jury gets shown surveillance footage from the scene. The video showed steady rain throughout the morning and wet ground, and another still image from this officer showed Anthony with his hands cuffed behind his back and the cut on the middle finger. Prosecutor named Bill. He says, Mr. Officer Cortez, was it a secret to anyone that you know of that you can't have weapons at a school event? And was it unprecedented to see a student bring a weapon? Cortez says, yeah, it's unprecedented. Everybody knows no weapons at school. school. They play the body-worn camera from his interaction with Anthony. That's shown in court. Anthony was seen with his hands over his head, presumably in the courtroom. The interaction with the officer, the one that he said that he had with the alleged suspect, is audible in the footage. Body cameras now being played. Yeah, I have the alleged suspect detained in handcuffs. Anthony blurts out, Karmelo, I'm not alleged, I did it. Anthony could be heard crying in the video saying, he put his hands on me, quote, I told him not to, but he put his hands on me. Karmelo is then heard telling the officer that he goes to Centennial and he's in the 12th grade. Officer testifies that Anthony seemed calm, cool, collected, despite moments of the body-worn camera footage where he appears to be crying from the officer. Government calls 17-year-old to the stand. Prosecutor asks this young man, do you like to hold things in your hand when you get nervous? He says, yeah, I do actually. He's up there on the stand with a football in his hands. He showed it to the jury. I'm a little nervous. I just got this football in my hands. I'm just, a little freaked out to be here. He explained that he was in the class of 2027 and was preparing to start his senior year at Memorial High School. He said on the day of the stabbing, he was going to run the 800 meter at the track meet. What happened? Well, I left Memorial at 8 a.m. I went to the Staley Field House with Austin and Hunter. There were 2 other students there, and he named a bunch of people, at least half a dozen other individuals who were under the tent during the track meet. We were all there. We were all running track, and Austin was running the thing, and he explains everything. He then says that Anthony was also under the tent, wearing Centennial gear from the other school, and standing with a student identified as Eddie. He said Anthony and Eddie dapped each other up and started talking. Karmelo comes in and is talking to some kid named Eddie. He said the next thing he remembers is people confronting Karmelo Anthony saying, hey man, you probably shouldn't be here. You need to leave our tent. He then told the jury that several team members told Anthony, hey man, you shouldn't be here. This is our tent. And remember from testimony yesterday, these are like locker rooms. So you're not supposed to cross-pollinate across these things. In fact, there are school coaches who are supposed to be there to prevent that from happening. He said Austin Metcalf, who was stabbed, was standing and everyone else was sitting. He recalled the encounter getting more aggressive, saying Anthony refused to leave. Karmelo wouldn't leave and told Austin, touch me and find out. He described both Austin Metcalf and Karmelo Anthony getting angry. He asked the young man, did anyone try to gang up on him? Mob up on him to get him out of the tent? Asked the prosecutor. No, sir. I mean, if anything, minor pushing at most, and that it lasted maybe 2 minutes. So what? Did Austin Metcalf take the lead in getting him out? He says, yeah, he did. He took the lead, and he said that he took the touch me and find out as Anthony trying to escalate the situation, to try to provoke him into starting a fight. Did Austin start a fight? He said Austin did not want to fight, but Anthony refused to leave. He then testified that Austin leaned in to push Anthony, and that Anthony just stabbed him. He said he saw the stabbing, but not the knife, and that the knife came from a backpack in Anthony's lap. According to the witness, Anthony had his hands in the backpack, and everyone thought he was bluffing. He says, touch me and you find out, with his hand in the backpack. 17-year-old said in the moments after the stabbing, Anthony then threw the knife, ran down the bleachers and onto the track. Austin fell down the bleachers onto his back, then got up and leaned against the guardrail where he lifted his shirt. He said his chest was bloody and that he looked scared. He agreed with the prosecution that Hunter was not involved in the incident, the brother, and that no one ganged up on Karmelo Anthony. So what'd you do next? Well, I pulled out my phone and I called 911. They played the 911 call for the jury. Call sounds frantic. Witness can be heard saying, my friend just got stabbed. My friend is bleeding everywhere. Come help. Additional footage is then shown of Karmelo Anthony leaving the scene. He agreed that Karmelo ran first, then slowed down, then resumed running again, saying that he was trying to be anywhere but where he was, and that he, quote, created a problem. He said, now, young man, do you think that Austin deserved to get stabbed? No. And do you think that Anthony, Karmelo, was the one provoking Austin? And he said, yes, he was. He was the one provoking Austin. Anthony was provoking Austin. During cross-examination, defense comes in. He says that I do remember Karmelo Anthony sitting outside the tent, and that the coach had a rule that no other teams were allowed at the tent in general. Tell me more about the pushing. So the 17-year-old once again describes the moment when Metcalf pushed Anthony, saying that it caused Anthony to go backwards. And he explained again that he saw Anthony's movement when he stabbed Metcalf, but you didn't see the knife itself, did you? No, I didn't see it. I just saw the movement. Okay. Now, our friend Savannah Hernandez has been on the scene outside. She's talking to Karmelo Anthony supporters, and we're were asked the questions outside, would you accept the evidence if it shows that Karmelo was not acting in self-defense? And here's what this lady had to say about all that.
If evidence does come out that Karmelo was not in fact fighting for his life when he stabbed and killed Austin Metcalf, do you think that the black community will accept that?
If evidence shows that he did not, no, we're going to stand by ours regardless. They stand by theirs. We're going to stand by ours regardless. I'm a mother first. I'm a black mother. Let me put that on there. I'm an African-American mother. So I have to color first and step into the motherhood. Nobody wants to see their child slain. So I do send prayers to Austin Metcalf, their family. But at the end of the day, I got to think like, okay, what did you do to him or whatever to cause this to happen, the reaction? We got to start taking accountability for our kid. Because then again, if my kid, that's why it's a catch-22. If my kid was Karmelo and I feel like his back was up against the wall, I'm going to tell you straight up, better mine than yours. Better mine than yours. So either way it go, everybody loses. A black boy allegedly murdered, and I say allegedly, heavy on the allegedly murdered somebody. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, this is about race. Because if the shoe was on the other foot, they wouldn't give a damn.
Who wouldn't give a damn?
Let me say this. Let's say the community.
So like,
What is she talking about? Derek Chauvin was convicted before he even stepped foot into trial. They played that video on repeat 24/7 for months before his trial even started. The state's witness said that George Floyd died because his heart failed because of drugs and arterial sclerosis, and they never even cared a rip about that. And there was a bad juror on the actual trial who said that lied about his prior actions being at a George Floyd protest wearing a shirt that said, "Get your knee off our necks." Remember that? And the whole country convicted Derek Chauvin. So if the shoe's on the other foot, it's destruction. It's unfettered obliteration of the white guy who didn't kill him. There was no suffocation. The knee on the neck didn't suffocate him at all. It was all made up, and he was convicted before the day even started.
If Karmelo Anthony was the one stabbed and killed by Austin Metcalf,
they wouldn't give a damn.
I come out here every Thursday and we pray for people going to court because we know this is the final frontier of racism and it's legalized here.
It was announced yesterday that there's no black jurors that were chosen. What are your thoughts on that?
That's why we need God. That's why we need God, and that's why he's going to show who's in control.
And would you be open to giving us your personal insights into the Karmelo Anthony trial and what your thoughts are on it?
I just want justice done. You know, we know nobody go to a track meet to murder anybody. Okay, come on.
Why do you bring a knife
It's
then?
an accident, self-defense. That's what it was. I'm not saying the kid should get off free, but first-degree murder? Come on. Basically, he's facing the wrong charge for the crime that was committed.
Do you think Karmelo is innocent? Do you feel like it's been an unfair response to what happened to Karmelo Anthony?
I feel that the justice system always over-respond when it comes to us.
Give me a break.
So definitely, I mean, look at the charge.
Was he around in the George Floyd era? Did he miss that whole chapter of American history?
It was self-defense. He was wrestling with two guys. I don't know what the parameters of it. But
no, he wasn't.
So, you know, 2 against 1, that's self-defense.
All right. So thank you, Savannah Hernandez, for those clips. But I think we see how this is going to split when it comes to facts and evidence and race. So we'll keep our eye on this. A brutal, brutal murder from what we can see. And we'll be back to cover it soon as the trial continues. We'll have all the details. Thank you for joining and subscribing as we do.
To put it, and I can tell you the testimony just wrapped up for the day a few minutes ago, right at the top of 5 p.m. A big focus this morning was on body camera video that was shown to the jury that was worn by a Frisco ISD school resource officer who ran over to the track field when he heard that there had been a stabbing. That is when coaches that were on scene and other students were pointing out a man who we later knew to be Karmelo Anthony, wearing a sweatshirt and sweatpants, that was the guy who had reportedly stabbed Austin Metcalf. The resource officer said that he was able to take Anthony into custody without incident, and we were able to see that in the video today. At one point, Anthony, as he's being cuffed, appears to get emotional, telling the officer that he told Metcalf not to touch him. I can tell you that there's obviously been some dispute from both sides as to what exactly was said to Metcalf or to Anthony just prior to that fatal fatal stabbing. So that was a big focus today. Another big focus was another officer's body camera video also that gives another angle of the chaotic scene. That officer was near the scene as Austin Metcalf was being treated by first responders. They were giving him a chest compression. At that point, it was a lifeless body. Sadly, Metcalf passed away, but they were doing everything they could to try to save his life. That was very difficult to watch. Also, Metcalf's twin brother in that same video could be seen inconsolable on the ground yelling, he was my best friend, that was my brother. So that was kind of the gist of what we heard today. Certainly a lot to digest for this jury. Again, the judge choosing to wrap up about an hour early today, and testimony will resume tomorrow.
The prosecution started by taking the jury back to the moments immediately after the incident. Not just what happened, but what was said. Because juries pay attention to behavior. They pay attention to reactions. They pay attention to statements.
Good afternoon. Yeah, day 2 off to a emotional start this morning. We had a first responder as the first witness on the stand, 3 witnesses so far, first responder and 2 officers. The first responder was a firefighter and paramedic that pretty much testified to the severity of the wounds once he arrived to Austin Metcalf's body, and just talked about the intense life-saving efforts they went through trying to revive him, to which, of course, to no avail. But they talked about, attaching a machine to his chest to read a pulse, and he had no pulse. They said it was flatline. There was an acronym he used, a medical term, and the prosecutor asked for, simplicity for the lay people in the gallery, and he just said, yeah, he had no pulse. He was pretty much dead in a cardiac sense. They loaded him up into the back of the ambulance, to which, he eventually did not regain consciousness. But then we went on to see more from officers, and they were testifying about their response to the situation that day. One was a school resource officer. He was actually the one that made contact with Karmelo Anthony and the one who detained him. But he talked about the commotion when he ran out there to the scene, all the kids running to him saying, someone's been stabbed, and they pointed towards Karmelo's direction. And so you see on the body cam when he finally approaches Karmelo, and Karmelo seemed to cooperate. He was being very cooperative. He was being compliant. He didn't try to run away. But the key thing about this testimony here on the body cam, you hear Karmelo say to the officer, he put his hands on me, I told him not to. And when he says that phrase, he clearly he's crying hysterically. You can hear him sobbing in a very emotional state, but the prosecution's harping on that last half of that statement, the I told him not to part, because the prosecution says that's simply a lie. We've heard that phrasing, he told him not to put his hands on me, or put your hands on me and see what happens. That's the narrative that the prosecution's running with, and that eventually led Karmelo to stab Austin Metcalf. But there was another officer whose body cam was played during this officer's testimony, where you heard the officer say, we have the alleged suspect, and then you clearly hear Karmelo say out loud, I'm not alleged, I did it. So kind of damaging to the defense's case here. But then we just heard from an officer who arrived who did not partake in any life-saving effort for Austin Metcalf's body, more of scene patrol, scene security is what he was saying, and evidence control. He was the one securing off the scene there, and he actually showed pictures of the knife. It was a 5-inch blade. The first time the jury actually saw that knife in person, they did a demonstrative effort in front of this jury where they showed that the blade could be swung out really quick with just the stroke of a thumb. You could open it really quickly with one hand, but the impactful.
Bro, if he don't get off this isn't right.
If he gets, if it do happen Wednesday, it's gonna be some riots out there, so you better be protected. You better watch yourself.
I ain't worried about none of that, and I'm gonna be there. Fuck you, mean?
I mean, you can be there. I'm just saying, be careful. Don't initiate no crazy shit, because these niggas gonna crash out.
If they get in my face this time, I'ma hit them. Period.
Nah,
I don't care no more. No, I don't care.
You got 8 kids, baby.
We're keeping it peaceful, because right now we kind of waiting. It's a waiting game. If they want to turn up, bitch, we gonna turn up too.
You got 8 kids. You got 8 kids to take care of, baby.
I get out. I ain't going to prison.
Shit, you don't know how shit turns out, baby. It only takes 1 minute to kill somebody, or 1 minute to do something stupid to lock you up for life.
This ain't right, 713. This ain't right.
I know, shit.
I know.
I can't even sleep at night. This shit got me.
I mean, even the sound.
When I heard that, and I was hearing that boy cry on the body cam and looking at him like,
yeah,
that fucking hurt.
Yeah, I wish they would put Hunter on the stand. I wish they could put Hunter on the stand, man, because he got some questions. He got some questions to answer. But
So the defense can't call Hunter to the stand?
I don't know. I don't know how that works. I mean, I think they can, but it's still revolving around the video, man. The video got to show the jury that Karmelo was getting beat up on, or he felt threatened for his life. Like, I mean, like you say, they showed that he grabbed him, and I'm getting the counsel saying,
I think they're coming out. I think they're coming out.
Yeah, it's probably over with now.
It's over with.
Yeah. All right, well, go see you.
They're coming out. Yep, they're coming out. They're coming out.
All right.
Oh, they're coming out. I think that's them. Hold on, they're coming out. Let me grab them. Let me go get them.
All right. I'm going back to shit.
Hold on, stay here just in case. Was y'all in the courtroom? Were y'all in the courtroom? Hey, can I ask you something? Was y'all in the courtroom? Was y'all in the courtroom?
People don't want to talk to you. People crazy.
Was y'all in the courtroom? Huh? No, I ain't recording. I was in there yesterday and I ain't feel like going in there today. So that's why I was trying to see what's going on so I can, you know what I'm saying? So I can know what's going on. I'm not here to protest. Can't talk about it. Oh, you can't? Okay, that's fine. I ain't recording. I'm on the phone with my homeboy. That's cool.
them people ain't go to.
Stick! Hold on. Stick! What's going on?
Them cigarettes got her breathing hard.
Come to the car, come on.
You need some medic glasses, AJ.
Hey, what? Shut up. He said, what? Wait, come here. Come here, say, come here. I'll buy you whatever you want. Come here. Okay. Come here. I'm trying to do this one. Ooh, I gave me chills. Ooh, it gave me chills. The daddy got caught coaching one of the witnesses. Let's dress for this trial. Yes! Fuck you, yes! But shut up, don't say nothing. Ooh. That's the. I ain't gonna say nothing. Ooh. Oh. What about me? Oh my God. Let's go to the car. Oh my God. I can't release this information no more. I can't do it. I can't do it. Well, I'm finna go to the car. I'm finna go to see. I may have to go on mute. So she can run me down. I'll be right back. Hold on, y'all. Hold on. Okay, what's that? At first, they was eating them up. I know. It's somehow.
If you call me one more time, look at
Hold on. Oh, what kind of boyfriend awake, man?
I said, bro, she cool. He like, man, he like, shit, bro, she in jail. I said, man, I don't know. I'm a real nigga. I don't know what you told her. I don't know. I said, I don't know what you went to jail. Cause I ain't talking to you.
I was in that motherfucker.
Oh, man, we got to call this damn.
The defense was knocking down everything they were saying. He told them, he said, can we dismiss it because the state is not producing nothing. So he told them no. So he brought in somebody, this last,
Bro,
scary.
motherfucker been in court the whole time.
The boy on the scene. What?
Just came out. Court just got out.
Oh yeah, now. I mean, I made it in this morning. I just sit there. Okay,
hold on, let me take my report.
Let me talk to your girl real quick. Just I get $10. I give you $10. You come too. Okay, so what? Okay, so the fist was eating them up, right? Okay. So the fist was eating up the witness, the state. So the fist was eating up the state witnesses. Yeah. Let's go, Toby Shook. Come on, say something.
Yeah.
Their story is, hey baby, identical. Like everybody's story, and he's leading them into their whole story. Like their whole story, all they're saying is yes. Like yes, I said that. Yes, this is what happened. Yes, yeah. So all they saying is yes to the same story, the same script. Oh, they what's their favorite word? Bluff. Everybody thought he was just bluffing. All of them say bluff. The specific word bluff. And we're from Frisco. Nobody thought you really had nothing. Yeah, that's what they say. They keep doing it. They tried to switch this last person. They switched his thing. Yeah. So he came out as the defense. The defense made him come. He was shaking and everything, looking at Jeff Metcalf. And from what I'm hearing, because I wasn't looking at Jeff Metcalf, I was writing. No. So you know Jeff was sitting in front of me. Jeff was sitting in front. That's the dad, right? Yeah. He was sitting in front of me. Keep going. On the left side. The witness, the little boy that was a witness, the last witness, he looked scared as hell. He just kept looking over in the corner, like looking over there on that side, and he was shaking like. I just heard somebody, when the girl say, "I'ma just give him a slight smile," I want to admit it. See it on the video. Them two white girls that were sitting right there in front of me? No. That sitting next to Jeff? They was. What you talking about? You talking about his family or you talking about just Metcalf family? I don't know who they are to them. But them two white girls. Yeah, they family. Yeah, that's the ones I talked to yesterday. Okay. It was a lot. I don't know. At first, so do it look like it's looking good? It's not looking good because the juries, the case is no case. They have no case. When I say all that is like a recycle of everything. Yeah. He's leading them into every answer. So it's like y'all don't even.
They ain't striking that shit for leading the.
And they're supposed to strike it. Why Toby don't say strike? He keeps. I don't know why he's not saying it. I'm like, this sounds like leading. You like they're like, so that would be self-defense, right?
That's legal. Yes. Can't do that.
I'm like,
can't ask me a question.
Can't do that. I don't know what the hell to think about these. And then when the state rests, it was like, so we're gonna motion for the dismissal because the state haven't proven nothing. That's why I was asking. Remember, we was outside asking, Toby gonna try to get dismissed. Let's go. But they denied it. He said denied. You knew Roach was helpful. Roach, I ain't gonna say he was helpful, but the man fucked up a couple of times.
Who did?
Like the man, the state witness, the prosecutor. The prosecutor. So the prosecutor was trying to, he was trying to cross. No, they was the. Let me get my words out. First side, the defense. I've been looked. So the defense was trying to talk to the man, one of the coaches. The state jumped up and said, I'm trying to get, like, he got to leave. I don't know what the specific words for it is, but he trying to get that witness taken down. And Roach was like, that's illegal. He was like, you can't get him took down. Like, I would have used relevance. And he was like, yeah, that's what I was going to say, relevance. And then the defense had to argue that. Like, what is the relevance of what he's saying to the case? You understand what I'm saying? I got you. Like, so coach, the roach coach, coach that state to say relevance instead of what he was originally saying.
He gave him a knock.
Yeah.
Tell me what you supposed to say.
Somebody, no, that's illegal what you just said. Like, you can't just bar a witness just because you don't like what he said. You got to argue something. And I would have said relevance.
Yeah, you're supposed to argue
that up. Yeah. Relevance. That's the one there was to say, yeah, that's. So they can't fucking say nothing? Like, what the fuck is shit doing? I don't. The fuck is you doing, bro? They came in sweet. They got all of them alive. Every witness they brought out, lie. But Toby is showing that they lied. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, so Toby came in there swinging. Let's go, Toby. Let's go, Toby. The only way you will not be able to win this case it's some jurors. That's all. We all say that. It's some jurors. When they don't have shit, they have nothing, bro.
The state is weak.
I'm gonna go. The state weak than a bitch. I knew the state was weak yesterday.
Oh, they got you could guess what they did. Defense ate Eddie ass the fuck up.
Yeah!
Eddie ass up. Eddie came. Eddie tried to sit up and say he don't know Karmelo.
Yeah, but Eddie, you was just, well, that ain't what Nathan said.
That ain't nothing. Let's watch this, what he did. Put out pictures.
Come on, Toby. Come on, Toby.
I got pictures. Come on, so bad that the prosecutor say I'm sick.
Nah, bitch, you ain't this was relevant because this thing just said he didn't know you. Come on with it. Yeah. Come on with it. Jack, I'm coming Monday. I swear to God, I'm coming. I'm coming. Okay, I got you. So you feel it for me, I'm feeling for you.
Okay, so this is what I got to do. An attorney was establishing a relationship with Eddie.
Okay.
So this is everything that he motherfucking did from January. This is all the pictures he popped out. January the 5th, 2024, attorney asked Eddie, do he remember? He said no. Exhibit 5, 6, 7 more photos of Eddie and Mello and Valera, which is the girlfriend that Eddie is and Eddie, they call him cousin because Eddie mama and her mama business.
They got that.
The fuck out of here. The fuck out of here, Sid. Fuck out of here. This shit is real. Yeah. You better shake that ass.
No, look, so these, come on. Look, January the 3rd, 2024, they had a party at Eddie's house, and Eddie called Mello and invited him to it. More photos of Eddie and Mello at his house, another photo of Eddie and Mello was in the same place together. Exhibit 9 and 10 photos of Eddie and Mello, with Eddie's grandmama. Oh, you ain't with the grandmama.
Man, this family at this point. You gonna be the grandma and everybody else. You family. You ain't no friends.
Yeah. Peace carbon. Another occasion where they was playing video games and Mello was playing the guitar, but Eddie said he don't remember.
They family, see.
And so guess what the defense said? Well, let me see if I can help you reflect your memory.
Let's go, Shook. Let's go, Shook. Let's go, Shook. Let's go, Shook. Let's go, Shook.
And another photo, exhibit 11 and 12, more photos of Eddie and Mello with Eddie, and then his then girlfriend, and then Eddie text Mello and want to go out on a double date with him, girl, and then
they brothers at this point.
They got together 3 times a month. Eddie was lying about remembering who Mello was at his house. Eddie said they were cool with each other.
Okay. Baby, that's more than cool.
One time you gotta keep
lying to cover up the other lie. Come through.
Eddie said nobody jumped in when Austin got Hunter when they were going back and forth.
But Hunter said himself that Austin took the lead.
Sure, but then Hunter, they also said Hunter wasn't even there.
Well, listen, I heard that on the other person about Hosea said different too.
Wait, what happened?
So, they said that he didn't jump in. They said he didn't jump in. Hosea said that Hunter and Austin both said something to come out. You see how they remember how they trying to say yesterday that Hunter didn't
say a damn thing.
Oh, that changed today.
Oh, But let me ask you something. But that's the witness that the defense called in.
I'm gonna start him.
Or this is state.
I put it on Eddie was a
Eddie was a motherfucking state witness. But I thought Eddie was supposed to be a defense witness.
I thought so too.
And the motherfucker flipped. So that's why
I'm glad he flipped. Not only did he flip, he broke down and boo-hoo cried on the fucking phone.
Let's go! Kill! Now the only way he don't win this shit is that fucked up jury. This case is no.
Y'all, I'm gonna bring up the fact that it need to be a bitch trial, and because
it needs to be a bitch
coaching the witness.
The daddy was coaching the witnesses.
In there, they're suing the daddy. She ain't supposed to be in there. Why she in there in the trial with y'all? They're suing the daddy. They're suing Anthony daddies. Karmelo daddy been sued by the lady Susie that's been in there sitting there with y'all.
Who is Susie? What's she look like?
It's this white lady that's suing him right now. She in a lawsuit with Karmelo Anthony daddy.
Oh, so she ain't there with them. Well,
she been in the trial. She
that don't mean nobody.
You can't, if you in a lawsuit with somebody, she not supposed to be in there. That's a conflict.
No, the lawsuit different.
She know they gone in there.
So Eddie got on the stand. Eddie got on stand, start boohooing.
Eddie, he started crying before the fucking. See, this was during the prosecution process that day.
Yeah,
no, he's straight today.
Today. What's today?
Oh, he need the first one today.
Yeah, you got that right.
He's about 18.
And guess what? Prosecution lied with the rest of their case. And did not tell y'all they was gonna do that.
They arrested. They got
the defense witnesses. Now they arrested.
They told their whole story.
They arrested because Eddie was they arrested. They got them case.
That's why they arrested.
So they didn't try to cross-examine.
So now, yeah. So now, guess what? The defense told Eddie, "Don't you go no more from where we ain't done with you,
bitch."
Yeah.
What the fuck is she talking about? You ain't going nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what don't flip people. That's what don't. That's how they go.
Flip. That's a, and she said that they called for a dismissal, but they didn't give it to him.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
They tried to dismiss him.
So but guess what? I understood that. You know why? Because the judge don't want that on his back, and he don't want to be getting up that. He gonna. Jury makes them serious. You don't want that on the. That's why
they want to retire. We gonna get probation. I think if he land 5, that's still.
Man, you got so many goddamn notes.
It might be. They gonna refile it. But the type right now, what you think?
So there was never a fucking policy that stated that a fucking team member cannot go up on another. And then one of the other witnesses said that he was for the defense. As a matter of fact, Jeremiah and Karmelo like this. I fucked that little nigga. Yeah. He kept it solid. He said, we right up intense. He got a deep voice. He sound like
not Jalen, but Jeremiah, because Jalen I don't like
Jeremiah. Jeremiah's like what's that man on board to me? Boy.
Oh, I know he's some Sean.
Yeah. He said, yeah. He said, we be in there all the time.
Sound like dress up 500.
Yeah, that's where they messed up when they said that Eddie was the one that called Karmelo over there.
We didn't need on the defense side, and they would have been able to buy him anyway. He was supposed to pay for look. He's on the right side.
They
right. He was been able to be bought.
So they told it.
Why that dad was over there trying to coach her.
He ain't gonna be able to go home tonight.
Trying to coach him, huh?
Oh, and then Jose also said that when he asked him, did Tion stand up? And he gonna tell me he don't recall. That's when the dad was coaching him to say, I don't recall.
They were saying the same.
They already said that Tion. Nathan told it all and said that Tion and all of them was over there and they stood up. But Nathan, he said I didn't recall, but he did say that it was him. Tion, remember them names? But Nathan told it.
Let me go to the first fucking week.
But Nathan told it.
I ain't have a one page left. These bad dudes, we came. I ain't have a one page left. The first witness was Julian Santana, 17 years old, go to Memorial. The attorney asked him, how did he get there? He said, on the bus, now they good. Julian said that he was under the progression that he was under the team. Julian said he was the one that asked other team members who Melo was. So also, Julian
he instigated it.
All of them got blood on their hands. Got blood on their hands. Yeah. Oh, and another thing, the coach said that normally, see, the coach one will tell them and monitor and manage the team. So then tell them, what was y'all telling us? What was y'all coach at? What was your coach at? Why y'all coach went there? Because Austin should have went and got that coach.
Damn nice. Yeah. They try to take back their home. Hey, thing about it.
Oh, and they kept on saying that they didn't think that he was serious. That he was bluffing. They were.
That's a lot of tell you. See, Melo said what he did. They throwing him on the bus, but God exposed it.
I'm gonna tell the judge was nodding off sleep.
Well, I'll tell you one thing.
Rose was sound asleep too. Sound asleep. Girl said, what the fuck, dog? Rose sound asleep too. That's what I'm telling y'all. Rose was sound asleep. It done went from the jury falling asleep. The damn witch got falling asleep. The goddamn judge falling asleep too. Yeah. It's a mistrial. Yeah. It's a mistrial. But I bet you Fox, CNN, they're not gonna report what she's reporting. They're not gonna do that. They was already fucking up. They was already cleaning that shit up.
I had found it a while ago, but it was.
Y'all got the raw.
Okay, it's 2 S's right there.
So Sid, you need to come. Sid, you need to text my phone. So you gave me your number. Yes, I did. I wrote it down on your paper yesterday twice. I ain't got the damn number. That's why I had to get this paper. Yeah, you need to text my phone so I can keep you laced up. When I go in Monday, I come out when I'm on break and keep you laced up. Okay. What are you writing down?
And write down.
You got your girl. So is it looking good for Karmelo? It's looking good for him. The jury, when they was on his ass. Oh, remember the Indian woman that killed off his head? She might be on none side. Every time they did something, she was going like this. Come on, Indian. I told you they fuck with us. I work with them. Going like this.
Okay, I already know the car.
Check this out. Remember the Indian lady that I was saying I can get with her right now? Yeah. She gonna turn out to be a big one. This good. Every time that they was talking about her, them missing. This is what she was doing, y'all. She said, she was understanding what they were saying. Let's go. All it takes is one. I saw her do that twice. All it takes is one. I saw her do that twice.
We may not even need it.
It's 100. It's 100. It's 100. Oh, I pray he. Let's pray and go down like. Oh Lord. Yeah, pray to our ancestors. He's ready to go. And yeah, exactly. They you know what I'm saying? We for people that put that foot down. Oh, they did. Because
like if the Nigadar picks up something on the on the sonar, I gotta respond. Every once in a while we get a false alarm. It happens. My bad. Checking in from Massachusetts. Yes, Massachusetts. Phoenix Light Games is watching from Coral Springs. Bad Rastafari watching from Deltona, Florida, not to be confused with Daytona, Florida. Find quite literally everything you need to dominate the dating market here. In the future, guys, I only want people to come up who disagree. If you agree, I appreciate it, but I tend to have more productive conversations with people who disagree. I want somebody, and guys, again, I'm open.
He is good. Oh, Sid came through with the motherfucking notes. I'm gonna ask her, can I pay for them house real quick? Unless she going live, I'm finna ask her, can I have them house? Take a picture of them bitches, break that shit down. Sid notes.
Oh. How you do? We going live at 8, I think.
What time you going live? Shit, if I can get him.
Most time they have something you can press.
I can fix it in the most and shit. And you want to go
You got it for 8.
I done told these people yesterday that you're supposed to be going over the other witnesses from yesterday and leading me into today, so you got to go live because we finna go over there with you.
Are you pushing in? Yeah, I think there's a
I said you need to set your live up so we can start.
No, her live already set up.
I got it already set up on stream.
Set up last night.
Anthony's actions unjustified provoked murder, alleging he goaded Metcalf into pushing him then killed him. The defense argues Anthony acted in self-defense when Metcalf made physical contact first. In the courtroom today, jurors shown surveillance video of the stabbing. Metcalf's mother wiping her eyes as jurors watched. Reporter Maria Guerrero from our NBC Dallas station in the courtroom.
You can see someone pushing someone. Then you see the figure that is identified as Karmelo Anthony moving up into the bleachers farther up before running down. And you can see him running away, then walking away before he is apprehended.
The prosecution says the case has nothing to do with race. But the trial now sparking backlash. The pool of 12 jurors and 6 alternates is made up of 5 women of color and 13 white men and women. There are no black jurors. Some say it raises concerns for fairness.
We are tired, and we're saying enough is enough. One black.
The trial expected to run 2 weeks.
Ryan Chandler joins us now. Ryan, take us inside that courtroom. Metcalf's coach took the stand today?
Well, Tom, that's right. We heard from Coach Robert Starr, his emotional testimony recounting the moment he found Austin Metcalf dying in his team tent. Metcalf's family weeping as they listened in. He's just one of the many, many witnesses the jury will lean on to paint a picture of what exactly happened that day.
Karmelo Anthony's trial is taking place in Collin County, Texas, before a jury with no black jurors. The case has sparked controversy because McKinney, the county seat, has been linked by some historians to North Texas history of sundown towns, segregation, and racial exclusion, raising concerns about fairness and representation. Make sense. The case has nothing to do with race. What you talking about, Willis? I told y'all last year, bro, they was going to do whatever it takes to rig up this case. I mean, if I'm lying, in my comment section, tell me I'm lying. They know this boy and his twin was in the wrong, but we'll talk about that later on in this video. So before I spaz out, I keep telling y'all all these people on the same team, the coaches, the teachers, the cops, the judges, the attorneys, they all on the same team. I can go on and on, but the students, the witnesses, they did one thing, bro. They went off script and they told the truth. Everything I've been saying. Man, run the tape.
Clarice, good evening to you. The prosecution called multiple students to testify during the afternoon portion of court. Those students were there at the track meet, either underneath Memorial High School's tent or nearby. Many of them are minors, and you could tell it was really difficult for them to talk about what happened. Many of those students also spoke with detectives during the initial investigation. The defense brought out transcripts from those police interviews multiple times during cross-examination. Friday afternoon's testimony consisted of students recalling what they saw and heard at the track meet last April. Most of the students are minors, under the age of 17, so their names cannot be shared. Much of the teenagers' testimony was consistent. A few described seeing Anthony, a Centennial student, say hi to a student under the memorial tent and sit by him. They testified that 17-year-old Austin Metcalf verbally told Karmelo Anthony, 17 at the time, to leave the memorial tent multiple times. They also testified that Anthony did not move and kept his hand inside his backpack. Multiple witnesses told the court they heard Anthony say, "Touch me and see what happens." The description of the physical altercation between Metcalf and Anthony differed between witnesses. Witnesses demonstrated to the jury they saw Metcalf use one hand. Others testified they saw Metcalf use both hands when he touched Anthony. Some used lighter terms such as nudge and touch. Others used grab and shove to describe the force behind the physical confrontation.
It's not unreasonable that these teenagers would have differing views. They were probably all in fight or flight and having trouble, processing what happened at that time.
Allison Richardson is a principal trial consultant, not involved in the case. She says the jurors are going to consider what a reasonable person would do in the situation. But the testimony from the students is something the prosecution could bring up again in closing arguments.
There's no doubt in my mind the prosecution will address this testimony because it's vital in considering whether or not he acted in self-defense or not.
In cross-examination of the witness witnesses, Anthony's defense team asked the teenagers to indicate their location on a diagram of the bleachers at Kirkendall Stadium, then indicate where Meth and Anthony were. The defense honed in on the physical comparison between Metcalf and Anthony. One witness tested 50 to 60 pounds on Anthony.
But we don't know the other side of the story yet. And what these jurors have agreed to do is to listen to both sides of the story. And so we may see some surprises in that testimony next when the defense opens, and we may not.
Several student witnesses testified that Austin Metcalf pushed Karmelo Anthony first during the confrontation. The defense says their testimony supports Anthony's self-defense claim, while prosecutors argue his response went too far. Make sense. All Austin and his brother had to do, bruh, was mind their own goddamn business and keep their hands to themselves. But no, they wanted to be bullies, bruh. You're not an adult. You can't tell somebody to move from under a tent, bruh, when it's raining. You can't do that. Then I said, wait. If the tables would turn, man, if a black kid would have pushed a Caucasian first, and that Caucasian kid unalived him, you will have Caucasian people all over Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, all over all social media, bruh, saying it was self-defense. And if I'm tripping, in my comment section, tell me I'm tripping. So you can't tell me in this case race don't play a big part, bruh, because Collin County, Texas has always been racist as hell, bruh, from the jump. Matter of fact, let's travel back in time right quick. Check this out. Collin County, Texas, where both the incident and trial took place, has a documented history of segregation, sundown town practices, and Klan activity. Concerns about racism remain part of the conversation today, with white supremacist flyers reported in North Texas in February 2025, and additional extremist propaganda incidents reported across Texas in 2026. Make sense. And I told y'all, bro, racism runs in their blood, brother. See, it ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun or the spike. If you know, you know. See, in this country, they hate to see black men defend themselves against racist Caucasian people. They want to just stand there and take it. Hell no. But they get to handcuff a black man, bro, and beat him to death for 3 hours and still get to go home. They get to shoot a young black boy, 14 years old, in the back, still get to go home. 5 Louisiana troopers can handcuff a black man and beat him to death and talk shit while doing it, and they all still get to go home, bro. You got these doctors. Black women go in for labor, bro, to give birth, and these doctors murder them. They murder them on purpose. Sometimes they murder their babies on purpose, bro, and they still remain doctors. They still get to go home. Tell me when to stop. I can go on and on. So you telling me that Karmelo Anthony can't defend himself? Man, look, Karmelo Anthony is innocent. I said what I said. Collin County, Texas is a fast-growing county that is roughly 50% white, 16% Hispanic, 19% Asian, and about 11% black. The county has a documented history of segregation and racial exclusion, and critics point to past controversies involving race and policing as reasons some black residents and activists continue to raise concerns. Make that make sense. Look, to my black parents, man, I know money is important, but we have to stop moving to these cities and neighborhoods that's only 11% black, because that means that's a sundown town. And if your black kids get in trouble, bro, they go do whatever it takes to railroad them. And if you feel like I'm lying, in my comment section, tell me I'm lying. In 2026, man, we have to stop being afraid of living around our people, because guess what? When shit hits the fan, who do you think gonna have your back? Our people. I keep telling y'all, man, racist Caucasian people and every other race, they stick together no matter what. They could be right or they could be wrong. That's how we gotta move, man. That's how we gotta always move, because I keep telling y'all, the game is never fair with us, but it's always cold. Collin County, Texas has a documented history of segregation and sundown town practices that excluded black residents for generations. Make that make sense. And y'all already know, bro, before I end this video, I have to always speak from my heart. Before I end this video, I have to always speak from my heart. I keep telling y'all, bro, today, the KKK, they don't wear hoods anymore, bro. Now they wear cowboy hats. Now they hide behind badges. Now they get selected for an all-white jury. Now they call themselves judges. Now themselves attorneys. I can go on and on, bro. In 2026, it's really important that we stick together, bro. Stop moving out the hood. Stop moving from around your people, man, because that's when we got power. They want you to get money and go to the suburbs, bro. Get money.
Returned to the courthouse in McKinney, Texas today for more testimony in the track meet stabbing trial of Karmelo Anthony. Thanks so much for being with us as we follow day 2 today. We understand that the court is breaking for their lunch. That happened a short time ago. That means our eyes and ears in the courtroom. Cody Thomas, he is going to be able at some point to be able to join us from outside of the courthouse. But he's been keeping us updated on everything that's unfolding in this camera-less trial. Let's go to the report that Cody logged for us on what he's been observing.
Good afternoon. Yeah, day 2 off to a emotional start this morning. We had a first responder as the first witness on the stand, 3 witnesses so far, first responder and 2 officers. The first responder was a firefighter and paramedic that pretty much testified to the severity of the wounds once he arrived to Austin Metcalf's body and just talked about the intense life-saving efforts they went through trying to revive him, to which, of course, to no avail. But they talked about, attaching a machine to his chest to read a pulse, and he had no pulse. They said it was flatline. There was an acronym he used, a medical term, and the prosecutor asked for, simplicity for the lay people in the gallery, and he just said, yeah, he had no pulse. He was pretty much dead in a cardiac sense. They loaded him up into the back of the ambulance, to which, he eventually did not regain consciousness. But then we went on to see more from officers, and they were testifying about their response to the situation that day. One was a school resource officer. He was actually the one that made contact with Karmelo Anthony and the one who detained him. But he talked about the commotion when he ran out there to the scene, all the kids running to him saying, someone's been stabbed, and they pointed towards Karmelo's direction. And so you see on the body cam when he finally approaches Karmelo, and Karmelo seemed to cooperate. He was being very cooperative. He was being compliant. He didn't try to run away. But the key thing about this testimony here on the body cam, you hear Karmelo say to the officer, he put his hands on me. I told him not to. And when he says that phrase, he clearly he's crying hysterically. You can hear him sobbing in a very emotional state. But the prosecution's harping on that last half of that statement, the I told him not to part, because the prosecution says that's simply a lie. We've heard that phrasing, he told him not to put his hands on me, or put your hands on me and see what happens. That's the narrative that the prosecution's running with. Led Karmelo to stab Austin Metcalf. But there was another officer whose body cam was played during this officer's testimony, where you heard the officer say, we have the alleged suspect, and then you clearly hear Karmelo say out loud, I'm not alleged, I did it. So kind of damaging to the defense's case here. But then we just heard from an officer who arrived who did not partake in any life-saving efforts for Austin Metcalf's body. More of scene patrol, scene security is what he was saying in evidence. He was the one securing off the scene there, and he actually showed, or we saw pictures of the knife. It was a 5-inch blade. The first time the jury actually saw that knife in person, they did a demonstrative effort in front of this jury where they showed that the blade could be swung out really quick with just the stroke of a thumb. You could open it really quickly with one hand. But the impactful part of that testimony is that we saw the body cam from this officer, where you actually see Austin Metcalf's pretty much lifeless body, everyone trying to give him chest compressions, but you see the body on screen, and that obviously brought out a visceral, emotional reaction from the Metcalf family. Plenty of tears and sobbing and consoling. And I looked towards Karmelo Anthony's side, and it was pretty stoic. There was a lack of emotion there, not necessarily in a negative sense, but just really take evidence here, all the facts of this case as the prosecution presents it thus far. That's the latest right now. I'll send it back to you.
Car, thanks to Cody Thomas for that report in McKinney, Texas. Let's bring in our guests who are standing by to talk about this evidence, this new evidence that the jury has seen inside of that courtroom. We have with us trial attorneys Lateef Gray and Al Wunsch III. Thank you both for being here to talk about this case that has so many people talking online. They are paying attention.
This is a response to the mothers, the black mothers in this community.
Of self-defense. Prosecutors, on the other hand, calling it a, quote, provoked, unjustified murder.
I've seen all the documents in this case, and we hear where, and we see the affidavit where Karmelo Anthony says, he put his hands on me, but I told him not to. But what I didn't realize is that he's actually crying, because when you hear the body-worn camera, you can hear him crying. And he's saying, yes, sir, no, sir, to the officer. And one of the things that both sides pointed out, he doesn't resist, he doesn't do anything. He's very compliant with what the officers were saying. And he's emotional at points throughout that body-worn camera.
Right. And you can definitely see at one point, you can hear Karmelo Anthony almost hysterical, crying, and the prosecution and the defense sort of got into this little back and forth exchange through the witnesses, talking about he was sort of flat when he was in the car, and while he was during the ride back, he was kind of flat, and we didn't get to see that. The camera would probably be far too long, and the jury would certainly lose interest. But that's one of the footballs that we saw go back and forth, is how much contrition? Is this something that he sort of turned on and off? And we also heard testimony that really dovetailed with that later on, which was, well, he was walking away at times, maybe running away. It was certainly very wet out there. Yeah. So I think that it really goes to his emotional state.
Well, and then you hear Cortez say, but when he was in the car, he was calm, cool, collected. But then the defense comes back and they said, but we didn't see all of it. You didn't present, but just a small portion. And if you listen to all of it, you're going to